ladies and gentlemen, gamers, gamettes, kings and queens, everybody in between, blah, blah, blah. You know the deal because you already know the spiel. But today is not the day where I pull out the 12-gauge shotgun and point it right in between Sonic's beady eyes and, well, blow his head off. Today is actually a day where we talk about another parasite that, well, can do the very same. We're talking about Metroid because today is the Metroid Retrospective. Because instead of talking about a series that just absolutely leaves you perplexed, confused, and dumbfounded, we're going to talk about something that I think everyone here at the very least has a little bit of an admiration for. Because, you know, it's very, very easy to have a podcast episode dedicated to tearing something down as opposed to, you know, praising something. So let's flip the script on its head. And Sora, how are you? You doing good? You feeling yourself? You're not going to be breathing into the mic all heavily now, are you?
I moved my mouth away from the mic to breathe.
Oh, okay.
Hey, old internet references. I'm 30.
Oh, man. So I guess we won't leave the fossil talking for too long. I don't want to have another Land Before Time incident. Anyways, Mr. Joe. You're doing all right. You're doing okay.
Yeah, I'm alive. You know,
as much as we can ask from you.
I'm I'm at home now, so I don't have to have the stupid voice filter on. You can actually hear me laugh. You can hear my.
You're no longer a podcast on the go. I understand. Hey, man, every great caster has their to-go kit. You know, even when they're visiting for the holidays. But that being said, I think the best way to tackle this would be in order. But before we do that, like, what does Metroid mean to you guys? What is it that keeps you coming back? What makes you the gluttons for punishment for this series to just keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper into not just its mythos and lore, but into its gameplay mechanics and speedrun tactics and advanced techniques as well? So tell me, what does it mean to you? Why are you here? Either one of you can take the floor on this one.
We have to talk about and explain why we like things.
I mean,
I didn't fucking come here for this.
Well, then what did you want to do? You just wanted to defecate all over Prime 2? That's what you wanted to do? Yeah, I'm all serious. That's right. You're going to say something nice first. That's right. Got you by the balls. Vice grip.
You see? Someone who's... Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just going to let the people know. Like, you see, that's how you got to get your co-host in line. You know, you got to grab them with the vice grip. You got to tell them, oh, don't worry, we're going to the store to get your favorite meal and your favorite toy. And they're like, oh, wow, macaroni and cheese on Hot Wheels. And then you get them there and it's boom. Welcome to the dentist. Them wisdom teeth got to come out, pal.
As someone who's never been crazy about immersion and like, oh, I'm totally in the game, I feel like Metroid is one of the very few where I've played SM, the Super Metroid, for years, decades, oh god. More times than I can count. And I never have the thought of like, on to play a video game. It's such a rich, well-designed world. The atmosphere, everything comes together to just, it's a really good experience. And if we go to game design, it's a really well-made experience.
I follow that. For me, you know, it's very, very simple. All right. There were 3 games that were at my house that me and my dad bonded over for all of like my infancy, like being like the ages of 4 to like 7. There are 3 games that had my entertainment value to the max. One of which being a puzzle game called Panel de Pon, aka Tetris Attack. The other one being Kirby Superstar, and the third one being Super Metroid. Because as I told you guys before we started recording, very first memory I had of playing a video game ever was good old fashioned, why is there a green lizard spitting rocks and shooting feet at my dad? This is really weird. Because my dad's a gamer. He you know, he's been playing games for about 20 years as well. And when he saw that this beast that we now have come to know as Kraid was just giving him he was giving this man the baking soda. This man was getting bodied. This man was struggling. Because
he was giving him the hands and the toes.
Yeah, sure was. So he was giving him all 20 right there, the business. He giving him, not even just giving him the business, gave him the whole corporation, the whole industry, if you will. And you see, my dad, like I said, he was like, what? I want to say by that time he was in his 50s because, yeah, my parents had me late. Spoiler warning. But yeah, he's in his 50s. So, like, video games, he was never good at, but he played them. And he was one of those people that you see in those old movies where every time he jumps to the right, his body leans to the right. When he jumps to the left, his body leans to the left. When he presses down on the D-pad to duck, he ducks down. It's like he's playing VR in the 90s. Strange concept that may be hard for some of you to follow, but just close your eyes and just imagine it. Just imagine it, if you will. And I'm setting the stage because he wasn't really good at video games. So enter me. 4, maybe 5-year-old me, put up the controller. I see him fighting Kraid. I'm like, wow, I think I could do that. So I get a chance to fight Kraid. I beat him with Charge Beam because I didn't even know what the select button did. I didn't know that you could select missiles, super missiles, various other things to shoot this thing. So I was just running there with the basic Charge Beam. We didn't even have Spazer at the time. And I was like, wow, I did it. And my dad just sat there like gobsmacked, like, I've been trying to fight this thing for like 2 weeks. And like, you just sat down and then he couldn't even process the fact that we did it. And then obviously several weeks later, we're fighting Mother Brain. We're out of there. So Super Metroid is a game that you can definitely say a 5-year-old can beat because I did it with no years of gaming experience prior. And my dad couldn't get past Kraid, so you can't say he coached me. You can't go there.
But Frosty, Super Metroid is the Dark Souls of Super Nintendo games.
I don't. Who said that?
I don't know. I mean, someone has.
You about had a stroke just trying to get that sentence out of your mouth.
My brain was breaking as I was saying it.
That message clearly came from the Shadow Realm because there is no way a sentient human being on this plane of existence would ever utter those words in that order, even as a gag. I don't know who you are anymore, man. You one of the Lost Boys now. This man
was possessed by a demon.
Was it Legic? Did Legic get to you? Because Legic fucks, so maybe it's not the worst. Don't worry, folks. We will have a podcast episode to telling you all about Legic. Don't you worry. We will make sure that is no longer an inside joke in due time. But ultimately,
you'll learn all about the demon.
The demon. You won't like him when he's angry.
But no, seriously. Super Metroid is like an all-time experience for me. And obviously, as you all know, by the time I was like age 10, we get this beautiful game like in a 2-pack. We get Metroid Fusion and Metroid Prime that I believe in the US, they released like a week apart. So like, you guys know after Super, I was, chomping at the bit to get into those games. And then me and my dad played both of those games. So like, it was a great bonding exercise and a chance to find out that, hey, this game design is pretty good. I like how the areas actually flow into each other. It gives you a reason to come back to new areas with new equipment later on. And then you're like, wow, this area that I couldn't get to, or this this area that was just 100% an arduous journey to even get here. Now I can just use this new ability and like, oh, I could just skip all of those trials down there and just space jump my way up here. Or, oh, what's that? As speed booster, I can just shine spark up here. It's the stuff like that. It's the little things. The fact that the game opens up to be more of a sandbox as you progress through the game. And I really like that. But what about you, Senor Joe?
Well, I guess we're all like laying our cards on the table here. We're all coming up front like, yeah, we're all SM fans.
Yep.
It's all about transparency, Joe. If you can't be transparent with your audience, what do you have? Without trust, you no longer have the foundational building blocks to showcase that you may or may not have some predisposed biases that you may or may not be in control of later.
Yeah. So, yeah, like, I mean, for me, Super Metroid 2 is like one of my earliest gaming memories. Like,
whoa, there was a Super Metroid 2?
Shut up. I was... God damn it.
I didn't have. I'm
Super
sorry.
Metroid also.
I did not have the self-control. I knew what he meant, but I had to do it.
I thought it too, but I was just going to keep going.
Okay, as long as we all acknowledge that in that moment we were all 5 years old again. Anyways, continue, Joe.
Super Metroid was also one of my favorite, or like one of my earliest video game memories. So like playing on my grandpa's Super Nintendo, which I still have, um, and just yeah, like one of my earliest memories with the game is getting stuck on the new bridge in Brinstar because I didn't know how to run.
Filthy scrub. You casual. Go back and tell
And
young you were a bozo. A clown
oh,
even.
he already knows.
Oh, damn. Damn, that's tough. Now I feel bad. I feel like I just bullied a man in the past. Sorry, young Joe.
But for me, like Metroid, it's about like the structure, like the structure of a good Metroidvania. It's so hard to define, but
Yep.
when you play a good Metroidvania, you just know it. And I feel like that structure and that sort of design philosophy, you can see it reflected in a lot of other games that people don't necessarily immediately say like, oh, that's a Metroidvania. Like, I still say the early Resident Evil games share a lot of sort of design and DNA with Super Metroid.
Like something I wouldn't call a Metroidvania, but the influence is obviously there.
Yeah.
I'd agree. But you know what else I'd agree on?
That Prime 2 sucks.
We will get there when we get there.
He's
Skip
chomping
like
at the bit.
Oh, he's frothing at the mouth. He doesn't know how. He can't contain himself. We got to put a gag order on this man. We got to get this man to disclose an NDA. All right, we got to get this man to sit here and shut the fuck up for at least a good 20 minutes. So when we get there, and then we can just unload the whole clip. He can pull out his assault rifle, his BFG, and he could just bring a towel, a hanky, whatever he wants to do, a sock even, and then just mondo nut in rage. The hate fap. Get a good old hate stroke out there when it's time. But when it's time. Because first, folks, we're going to start off going in order chronologically in terms of release. So we got to talk about the first Metroid game. Now, this was a game I did not own. I had to go to a neighbor named Mr. Hollis, who lives about a mile away down the neighborhood because we live in a 2-mile stretch neighborhood. So I had to walk there if I wanted to play this game. And let me tell you something. I had to get what we would like to call a scholastic journal or a notebook, or some of you may even call it a composition book. Actually, do y'all even use that? Like, young people who are listening to this, do y'all even use composition books and spiral notebooks anymore? This is very important. Like, I actually don't know if they still sell these in stores. Because I'm sure most of the stuff y'all do now is digital on like Microsoft Word or Notepad or whatever, WordPad, whatever text app you guys are using, or if you're going to write essays on your phone. Damn, people probably do write MLA format and Chicago format essays on their phone. Anyways, the point is, the point isn't about scholastic journalism and things of that nature. What we're talking about here is Metroid. So the reason why I have to talk about a scholastic journal or, a notebook or things of that nature is because
Map.
There was no map. You had to map this stuff out yourself because these rooms all followed the same format of horizontal room, vertical room, horizontal room, vertical room. It was kind of like a checkered board or a big game of tic-tac-toe when you actually look at your map. And there were secret areas, there was nuanced places, there were places where you were like, you weren't really sure if this was sus. Because let me tell you something, graphical hints back in those days wasn't a thing. You just had to guess. You were swinging for the fences on every occasion to try to navigate this game. And look, I understand it's created by a small team at Nintendo, okay? I want to make sure that we all know that this was back in the era of gaming where we didn't know if games were going to be financially successful. This was back when
the crash had just happened.
Like, we didn't know if video games were ever going to be let's say it, if we were just going to see if they were going to have staying power. For all we knew, this industry was going to end with the unveiling of Metroid existing. This could have been a nail in the coffin for the boys at Nintendo. This could have been an absolute industry meltdown yet again for the ladies watching at home. But the point is, the game itself has not aged well. And I'm going to tell you, back then, because I had Super at the house, and then I had this. And like even like 7-year-old me was like, nah, we come a long way. Because I will tell you right now, when I found Kraid in the original Metroid, I was just like, I'm lucky because I almost just would have walked right past this and never came back. I would have been one of those dark side filled dudes on early YouTube talking about some bugged game mechanic. The game's unplayable. You can't even beat it. Can't even fight Kraid. You need a Game Genie to fight Kraid. Oh my God. Do y'all remember Game Genie, Sharks, Action Replay? Oh my God. There's a whole era of gaming that some of y'all have no context for.
Cheat code books.
The wee babes.
Buying cheat code books at the Scholastic bookstore.
Oh,
There you
fuck.
go. And what do y'all know about demo discs in the mail? You know what? Let me stop. We're preaching about we're getting off
Pizza
topic
Hut
again.
demo discs.
No. Hey man, you want to play Conker's Bad Fur Day early? All you got to do is go ahead and go to Pizza Hut, get yourself a large. All right.
Anyway.
You
Fucking
see when this is why you can't have a podcast with someone who has so much stuff in his head and accompanied with someone who has undiagnosed ADHD. But he's working on it. All right, he's trying. He's pulling through. He's not spacing out in Metroid space. Ha ha ha.
got it.
But anyways, the original Metroid is a game that obviously has not aged well, and it's been since remade. And the remake is so much better. But once again, we will get there when we get there. But OG Metroid, for what it was at the time, I could see it being groundbreaking because it wasn't really anything like this. Like there wasn't anything that was to this scale of gigantic planet, whole bunch of stuff to do, not much. Like there wasn't like too much cryptic hints as much as you were just on a planet, desolate, on your own, go figure it out. Or play it for like 12 hours, figure nothing out, and then just quit. That's kind of the camp that most people fell in back then. But what do you guys think? Like, did you guys like Metroid? Because I'll be honest, 7-year-old me, I could live without it.
I too was gonna. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll go first. I too was gonna say it suffers from being too groundbreaking because we have to acknowledge the series would not exist without Metroid 1, obviously. But it's the same problem with Mega Man 1. I love me some Mega Man. Boy, do I not like Mega Man 1. They were figuring shit out.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta crawl before you can walk, and then you walk before you can run. And when you're running, you gotta build up stamina. And obviously, the Metroid series has evolved and changed and has been able to do all of that fairly well over the past 20-something years. But I just think that this was a rough start. But if you guys remember, gaming had a rough start. Okay, I mean, let's face it, Mario had a rough start because Mario is just a Donkey Kong spinoff. I will fight you on this. Anybody in that comment section, I'll fight you. What do you mean? You ever played the game Donkey Kong? Donkey Kong came first, and who were you playing as? Mario. That man didn't even have a name. That was just dude. That was just dude.
Plumber guy who was meant to be a fucking what's the guy that eats spinach? I'm forgetting.
Popeye.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like a Popeye reference or something.
And then he
Am I
became,
remembering that
Be a Popeye game? Like, wasn't it originally going
I
to
swear
be
it
a
was something
Popeye
like
game?
that.
I don't remember.
that sounds familiar, but I could also believe that's just like some nonsense stuff there.
Yeah.
But I do believe that that's actually what it was supposed to. But the point is, Mario started off in some dark era shit, and you see the juggernaut, the flagship that mustachioed man has become.
Now
if you
he's a
look-
crispy rat.
Exactly. And now when you look at a lot of the older games of the yesteryear, like, come on, guys. The original Zelda, ain't no one gonna tell me that game is heat.
No.
No.
You are a liar if you like that game.
There is no, like, you can like the technical prowess that was behind the absolute scientific, mind-boggling engineering that went behind making a game like that back when there was nothing to really base it off of. And you could admire the fact that it's come so far relatively so quickly. Because, I mean, when you look at the original Metroid and the original Zelda, and then you fast forward a couple of years, and then next thing you know, we're getting games like Super Metroid and A Link to the Past. All right, you gotta say that not only strides were made, leaps, bounds, and universes were traveled. They solved time travel, okay? They were in the hyperbolic time chamber for years to come out with those two titles, okay? And yes, we had the Zelda 2 and the Metroid 2 steps in between there, but you understand, both of those games, if I'm remembering right, both those games were in black and white. Both those games were very, I don't want to say limiting, but they were definitely very different. And somehow, once they got to the third title, they figured it out. But since we're talking about Metroid 2 a little bit, let's get Joe's opinion on Metroid 1, because I don't think he's got his out yet.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think Zelda 2 is on NES. But anyway, I'm going to lay it down for you here. I'm going to give you some knowledge. Metroid and Metroid 2, those games were made to sell Nintendo Power subscriptions. That's what they were made for.
Hold on, wait a minute. Nintendo Ninjas are out my house. Hold on, they're coming. I gotta go, guys. Help! Oh, no, never mind. They said that since I'm paying for the Nintendo Switch online subscription service, they're gonna let me off with a warning. All right, continue, Joe.
Like, both of those games, they're no map, and you had two choices, either draw your own or get Nintendo Power.
I mean, I had to draw my own. I wasn't going to buy a book for a game that I technically had to walk a mile to play.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's a little bit different because we're too young to play Metroid when it came out, or we weren't even born yet. But yeah, for people at the time when that game was new, it's like, what the fuck are you gonna do?
I think
before the internet.
I think one of the weirdest things is, you guys got to remember, back in the 90s, there was no Twitter, there was no YouTube video guides, like there was none of this. You went online, you'd be lucky to find if there was a GameFAQs thread that went into detail about what your game was, and even then, you would have to read, and they would have some weird formats like, hey man, so 37 rooms to the left of the grid system, and it's like, I ain't got no map. So you want me to manually count every room as you want me to do? Because we ain't got no fucking map. What the fuck? There's 37. Where do I count this from? This from the starting point, or is this from the far right of the map? Because if it's from the far right of the map, how would I know what that is?
Where's the origin?
So, obviously, being very tough. And let's be honest, when a game gives you no direction, and obviously if you don't have like a guide or anything like that, you don't even know what the end goal looks like.
Oh, and then respawning with only 30 energy. Fuck that game.
Oh yeah, oof, that's rough.
Don't die.
Just if you're gonna play Metroid 1, don't play like the original NES version. Like, there's a lot of hacks out there that make the game a bit better. There's even like I could never get it to work, but there's like Lewis scripting you can do to run with the game that actually gives you a mini map. So there's a lot of ways you can make Metroid 1 a lot more approachable. That being said, I still don't think it's really worth playing at this point,
especially with Zero Mission out.
Yeah,
I mean, it like some of these already got like definitive edition remakes where it's just like, don't even bother looking at them. Much like the next game we're going to talk about, Metroid 2, which, trust me guys, this one is actually in black and white, folks. This one had no color. It was on the original Game Boy. And I'm just going to start off by saying I'm going to keep this one very short and brief, because my relationship with this game is, it's black and white. All right, whatever. I guess that's cool. I mean, having a game in your pocket, being portable, I know it sounds like some normal, everyday, mundane piece of the life for you guys, but you guys got to understand. A Game Boy original. We were stupefied. We could not fathom this. Playing a game
Mario
in the backseat of a road trip that I didn't even want to be on because I was a 7-year-old or 8-year-old at the time who didn't get a choice in when we were getting to leave. Man, great. Absolute gangbusters. Especially if you were one of those idiots who fell for the ultimate gimmick, the ultimate genjutsu. I don't know how many of you guys know the peripheral I'm about to talk about, but it was a Game Boy Color peripheral that was this little. It was this little thing that you plugged in, and it had like a little spiral, and then it had a little ugly light that blocked the screen.
Yes.
But it was the only way that you could see the screen playing. Playing in the sun or at night.
Y'all kids even remember that fucking before 2000 there was such thing as unbacklit screens?
Like, there's so many things that y'all take for granted here that y'all just don't like, to all the OGs, y'all are nodding your head. Yep. To all the young viewers, y'all are like, so y'all had to buy a peripheral to see the screen? Like, yes.
I had to beg my mom for some more AAA batteries so I could keep playing Pokemon Blue.
It didn't even work that well.
Yeah, you had to like try all these weird angles and tricks.
There'd always be a glare.
Yep. And if you were playing a game that required you to have like good visibility to react to things, well, good luck, Chuck. Good luck. Because you're about to have some bad news blues all day, every day.
And then you might just have the Game Boy Pocket, which has like horrible ghosting on the screen. Just looks terrible. Terrible.
Yep, sure does. But being on the original Game Boy, like just having a portable game, even if the game wasn't good, just having a portable game meant so much that we gave a lot of games a lot of slack. And Metroid 2 is it's an open game, but boy, once you get about maybe 45 minutes in, you are going to be bored out of your mind because most of the planet's traversal is just slow, tedious, boring. The game doesn't come equipped with like a fancy soundtrack. Like, let's be honest, you can ride a lot of the early Pokemon games a lot, but you know, even then, even the early Pokemon games like your Blues, your Reds, and even your Gold, like obviously Gold and Silver, they have some bangers. Like Gold and Silver, when you're surfing, yeah, you hate water, you hate doing it, but that like, come on, man, you at least got some tunage. In Metroid 2, you got like bongos attempting to fart and some digitized trance music that was like more like
it's fucked up.
Like, no, legit. Matter of fact, right now, while you're giving your opinions, I'm gonna just put some Metroid 2 official music in the background of the podcast. And you guys will understand. You guys will understand exactly what I'm talking about.
It tried to go for ambience. It didn't quite work, in my opinion.
Because you got Metroid 2 Return to Samus, Surface of SR388. That's music. That's a bop. That has a rhythm. Wah, wah, wah. Wah, 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 wah. Wah, wah, wah. Wah, 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 wah. Like, that's an actual song. That is something that is conceivable. That is something where it's like, I understand.
And then you get nothing else.
You get underground and it's just like, what?
It's like,
who's fucking around down here in the caves, man?
Like, this is
It's got
Caverns
their
1.
Yamaha keyboard.
Like, this is Caverns 1. You hear that note? You hear that note right there? And then then silence, and then yeah. This is the music. Are y'all headbanging yet? Are y'all vibing?
Like, it doesn't give the atmosphere that they were going for. I don't think.
Right,
it doesn't convey it.
Yeah.
Let's try Metroid Nest. This is in the heat of battle. This one is an actual score. But you gotta understand, it's just this and it loops. This will drive you insane. Because the Game Boy sound chip was not...
Had like, what, 3 channels?
You gotta remember, this is coming out of a really bad speaker. This isn't coming through, like, right now. Most of y'all probably listening to this on a phone or headphones, and y'all probably have some really, really, really high caliber stuff at your disposal.
Coming out of this tiny little, tinny fucking mono speaker on your handheld device.
Then we have Caverns 3. And these were the Caverns themes were the ones you would hear the most. Because
Yep.
all those other like rhythmical pieces were for special occasions, like Metroid's Near, being in a Metroid area, fighting a boss per se, etc., etc., so on and so forth. Speaking of bosses, let me go ahead and play the boss theme real quick. Actual music. It sounds Mega Man-y as hell, but actual music. And then it turns into that. Wow, wow. But this is the state of your music. These are not like things you would be vibing to in a playlist. And and that's the whole song, by the way. It's 30 seconds and then it loops.
Sounds like a police siren.
Well, someone should be arrested for making us listen to that through the entirety of the game, but no, a police siren, it is actually not. But once again, you got to understand they were very limited with the technology that they had because these are portable devices, and it was something that wasn't necessarily seen for, well, let's be honest, ever. There's no precedent set for them. And Metroid 2, while I still think that its traversal is infinitely better than the first game, there's still a feature that they don't have in this game. Would anyone like to guess what that feature is?
I know.
What is it? What is it?
Spin jump.
Oh, man. Oh, no. I wasn't even thinking about that. Now I'm in pain.
Actually, wait, no, it doesn't, does it? Wait, does it have spin jump?
No, it
No,
has
I'm
space.
for-
I think it has
okay.
space jump, I believe.
Oh yeah, I'm getting my fucking dread. I've been playing too
Because like Metroid 2 definitely has space jump. I was like, wait, what? Like when you said spin jump, I was like, whoa, was this a sarcastic guess or what we?
I'm used to spin boost.
I was like, no. Don't ever bring up spin boost to me ever again, sir. Please. Please don't do that. But the answer, the true answer is map. We still need a fucking map. I can't see. I'm legally blind. And you want to know why I'm legally blind? Because even if we did get a map, it would be black and white. Because there is no color.
Well, here's the thing too with Metroid 2 is like the environments are less like static than Metroid 1 because like when you defeat the the Metroids in an area, then you have like you have an earthquake every time you eliminate all the Metroids in an area, and then a new section like will open up where like a part of the ground breaks open and magma drains out. Of course, this all happens off screen. You just have to walk in and see, oh, there's a new hole in the floor now.
But I genuinely think that like it does something pretty cool. Because while the level design is, let's be honest, it's pretty fucking linear. It does allow for the game to open up and not try to overwhelm you with there's a whole world. There's a limited amount of assets. Because remember, this is a game that's black and white. So if they overloaded you, let's be honest, some of these caverns would start looking very samey and you would get even more lost, much like in the predecessor.
Mhm.
So now the game's like, you obviously know going down is clearly your main prerogative. So when you're like, man, I killed a bunch of Metroids. Let's see how far down I could go. And then typically once you reach the lava, you know, all right, it's around here where I need to start doing my investigation, which I do think as a game design mechanic was actually pretty smart of them. However, once again, fighting the same Metroids when there's like, what, 70 something of them? That is so much busy work.
Thank God there was never another Metroid game that just recycled the same bosses over and over again.
Never happened. Never happened. Not once. Nope. A writer came up with that. It's fiction. And fiction is not real.
Metroid 2, again, does a lot to create what we expect from a Metroid game. But again, they're still working it out because now we have a story, we have a clear goal, and actual like game design pushing you towards that goal with the descending lava earthquake shit. And then we have expanding on all of Samus's powers and interesting ways to use them. But damn, is it just kind of boring.
But I also feel like, back then, like, see, today, a game on a portable device still has expectations of also needs to be kind of comparable to a console game. Especially now that, let's face it, handheld consoles are now just the Nintendo Switch, which is a console as well. So that expectation has definitely shifted over the years. However, back then, once again, there was no precedent. Just having a game that was even akin to what would be considered a all-time classic with the original Metroid, this game did make a lot of improvements. It made a lot of strides. Now, granted, didn't have any color, but the item progression was still a thing. Being able to traverse areas and other places that you weren't able to do prior because you didn't have a certain ability that you get later on in the game, allowing the planet to open up even more so, was also something that came back from the previous game and is something that has made, I mean, let's be honest, that's just a Metroid thing. Like, that's just the through line through the entire series, except for that one game, which we will talk about when we get there. But just know we have a lot of not good things to say about that game. I'll leave you comment right now if y'all can guess what game it is. And no, if you say other M, that's actually not the game.
Oh, fuck, I nearly forgot. We had to talk about that, don't we?
Yeah, you sure do, buddy. You
I was
sure
so focused on
do.
Type 2.
Yeah, you somehow that
This
slipped your
episode's gonna
memory.
go on for like 2.5 hours.
Yeah, you better strap in. You better get some breakfast, some lunch, and some dinner. Wherever you are in the world, you better make sure you're iced up and ready to go. Do some stretches, some calisthenics. We're gonna be here for a minute. But anyways, Metroid 2, at the time, probably just a solid game. Just hasn't aged well. It's not a game I can tell you. Yeah, it's not another game I can tell you to go back and play for yourself and truly enjoy it. So, that being said, I think it's time we move on to Metroid 3. Unless Joe has something he wants to say about Metroid 2.
I just wanted to say, like, I think Metroid 2 in a lot of ways defined the shape of what Metroid was to become more than the first game. Like, the first game lays down a structure, and then the second game obviously iterates on it and makes a lot of improvements that we would see going forward, like the ability to crouch and just more freedom of movement. And of course, that came at a price on the original Game Boy because Samus's sprite takes up half the goddamn
She's
screen.
so huge.
Yeah, she's a big step on me, Dommy mommy. She was the first Lady D, to be honest. That's right, Lady Dimitrescu. You stole Metroid 2's swagger, and she wants it back.
But yeah, I mean, that was pretty much all I wanted to say about Metroid 2.
But look,
important game, but very flawed.
I mean, if you don't get Metroid 1 and Metroid 2, the Super Metroid is not the game that it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, let's not act like, they say third time's the charm. Well, boy, was it ever. Because Metroid 3 comes out, and granted, you gotta understand, I was probably a literal, infant by the time that game released officially. I think it came out, 93, 94?
94.
So yeah, I'd have been 2. So it wasn't until 96, 97 when I actually started playing the video games. And let me just go ahead and tell you, for me, it's very rarely where I could say that I see a game and I feel like every beat that it tries to hit, it hits flawlessly. Now granted, you could say this, well, this is just the first video game you ever played. You might have a little bit of bias here. There's a reason in the precursor of the program why we said the thing that we said, so you guys know that you don't have to say it in the comment section because we told you that in advance. That's how transparency works. But ultimately, I feel like the experience was crafted in a way that was not just very clear where you're going. There's obviously a very well-defined path that slowly begins to loosen its grip on the player as you go through the game on your first playthrough. I would say it's not until you get to about Meridia where the game just kind of pats you on the butt and says, be free, my friend. And then you got to start trying to figure some things out. But all of Criteria, good old-fashioned green Brinstar, pink Brinstar, red Brinstar, the wrecked ship, teaches you everything that you need to know about the movement that is required for you to beat the game on your first playthrough, and what to do in clutch situations so that Meridia, while a daunting task, is something the player is more than equipped to handle.
You made me think. I never thought about it that way, but Meridia is almost like, in a sense, how the final boss of every game is sort of like a test for everything you've learned in the game. Meridia, in a sense, is the test of Super Metroid. Because let's be real, fucking goddamn Mother Brain isn't much. And while there is Ridley's area, it's sort of like a, I don't know, more like a gauntlet than a test, really. Meridia really asks you to understand what you're doing.
Yeah, Meridia is very open, and there's lots of interconnection between the various areas, and there's a lot of... It's still an area that, like, even to this day, I get confused about, like, where all the rooms are in relation to one another.
Like, I honestly feel like Metroid 2, like, its entire, like, the entirety of Metroid 2 and how you can feel about it is Meridia, just with a lot more water. Like, it's not a confusing mess. Like, once you know where you're going, you know where you're going. But it's probably the only one where I would say people who have beaten the game before, it's probably the only map station that you actually kind of are happy that you found. Because once again, not the most confusing, but a map helps significantly. And obviously, with the integration of the map system, it really allows you to not just fully understand where you are, but also to understand where you've been with the 2 color coded system. For blue areas are places you have yet to traverse, and pink areas are where you've been. So now, when you get an upgrade or there's a door that's blocking your path, you'll be like, oh man, I don't remember where that door was. But you can open up your map and you'll be like, well, there's this giant blue area over here, so clearly something stopped me from getting there. And then obviously you go there. Then now with your new equipment, you can now actually traverse the area. And I do feel like when you go through criteria, the entire game is teaching you, look at all these small little crevasses that you can't go in. And then all of a sudden you find Morph Ball. And the very first thing you see after Morph Ball is a crevasse. And the next 3 rooms are crevasse, crevasse, and crevasse. So you're very well aware that when you see something that's like this, out of Morph, you get bombs. Obviously, you can do Alcatraz escape, but you're not a speedrunner your first time. So, oh, these are bomb blocks. You go outside back to your ship. Let's just say you want to go back out that way. Then you bomb all the way through the right side. Then you find a super missile door, so you know you can't go this way. So then you go all the way back to the left, and you see more bombs, more bombs, more bombs. The game teaches you a lot about bombing, because then when you get the pink Bren Star, there is a room where in order to make any progress, you bomb, and you bomb, and you bomb excavate again. It is teaching you that bombing is something that is not going to get played out anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
The game gives you a lot of pretty much tutorial rooms on how to use an item as soon as you get the item. But the area is very well constructed, because while the room serves as a great tutorial for whatever item you get, the room still feels natural to when you don't have that item. So when you're traversing it, you just think it's another room.
And this is why we hate it when the game comes to a screeching halt and be like, did you know you could, this is how you use the speed booster. Fucking old games didn't have fucking tutorials, motherfucker. You just had to know.
You got a screen that told you the button you had to press.
That's it.
You know, you got a short message. This is how you do the thing. Now go do it.
And
I think it's really...
Oh, go on.
Go. I was going to say, I think it's really easy to like undersell, and like for us especially to take the map system for granted, because it is such a step forward in, like you said, Frosty. It shows you where you've been, where you need to go, where there are items at. And also, when you get map stations, it gives you hints about where you can go. Like I think your main hint about where Kraid is once you get the map for Brinstar, it shows you that where his boss arena is, but it doesn't
Yep.
show you the path there. You have to find the path yourself,
It's just
but it
this
shows
weird
you that he's
square.
there.
And I think you could say that I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the same thing is to be said about Speed Booster Bird, because it's either Speed Booster Bird or X-Ray. But there is a long blue hallway at the bottom of Brinstar that has nothing connected to it.
Is that it?
And I don't remember if that's the Speed Booster Bird, X-Ray, or if it's that thing under Charge Beam.
Hmm.
Oh, that might be under Charge Beam. Because, yeah, that's the waterway. They need Gravity Suit and Speed Booster.
Yeah. But the fact is, like, once again, you still have some things that you have to go above and beyond to even find. And the other thing that I think is actually kind of interesting about how the map is designed is it tells you elevators and it points you to where you're changing to another area. You don't have to go to an elevator and go, dang, where does this elevator go? Take the elevator and go, dang, this isn't what I wanted. Then take the elevator back down. It is clearly indicated on the map where that elevator is going to go, which new submap it takes you to, which I think is huge.
Gee, Frosty, what could you be alluding to? I have no idea. That sounds like something we might complain about later.
Don't worry. We'll get there when we get there. That's the common theme of tonight. We will get there when we get there. But alas, Super Metroid is definitely a big time W in my book. But does anybody else have anything they want to say about Super Metroid? Because I have one last thing I want to say. When you take
fillet Metroid for like an hour.
Okay, well, we'll hurry this up. I'll just say this. So, in the first Metroid game, it felt like every enemy that was in there was busy work. It just felt like they existed, and eventually it got to a point where you just wanted to ignore 90% of them. Metroid 2, most of the things that were not Metroids, once again, just felt like they were just little tiny obstacles. They didn't really feel like they didn't even feel decorative. They just felt like they were there. Like they just kind of existed. In Super Metroid, I would like to believe that some of these are really meticulously placed enemies. And I'm not saying every enemy was placed with great care, but there are definitely rooms where they knew you would need super missiles to leave. And they put these cactuses that are guaranteed super missile drops in those rooms. I said cactus instead of cacti, or they'll put those rippers where if you kill them, they also drop super missiles, or there'll be certain enemies that drop power bombs that you need a power bomb relatively soon. And for example, there's a room in Laurel Norfair, I think it's the backside of Gold Teresa, I believe, where if you shoot the super missile date, you can bring glitch through there, and then there's a bunch of rippers. And kill all of them, get a bunch of power bombs and super missiles, which will allow you to have better ease of use in that area. I also believe that I don't ever feel like, unless the game was setting up for that ambience of, ooh, spooky, desolate, and abandoned, I felt like there was enough enemies to keep the player engaged along with traversing the room. Because, let's be real, there's a lot of Metroidvania games out there that have these giant rooms of nothing. Like, there are enemies that are placed in places where you don't even have to go, and it's literally just jump on platform to the left, jump on platform to the right, jump on platform to the left, and you're just aimlessly climbing the tower. I'll give you another example. There's one hell climb, if you're good enough to do it, for the early game of Red Brinstar. Because typically what they want you to do is do a whole loop all the way around. They don't want you climbing from the bottom of Red Tower all the way back up. But once you get items like the ice beam and things of that nature, all of a sudden climbing the tower becomes less hazardous. You can just do it with ease. You can freeze the rippers in place and use them as footstools and footholds to climb vertically, get back to the top instead of having to take a roundabout, little detour trip. And it's stuff like that I think makes the game super dope. That being said, Super Metroid is the first Metroid game where you got boss fights that you actually enjoyed playing. The first time in the series, because of Metroid 2, I was sick of that. Metroid 1 boss fights was like literally a purple thumb just staring at you, shooting at you, and screaming. And a green thumb that was just like, yep, I'm the real Kraid. That's me. Pew, pew, pew. And that's it. That's what you got out of those games. And then in Super Metroid, you're like, Kraid, look at the size of you. You used to be the same height as me. What happened to you, fella? And obviously, oh, go on.
I was gonna say, like, that's one thing that hilariously we couldn't even experience the true horror in, is people who grew up on Metroid 1 Kraid experiencing SM Kraid. Like, what the fuck happened?
It's like, how are you so big? Then obviously you have Dragon, which was like, and the bosses really felt like they had like different things. For example, when you fight Kraid, it's teaching you, hey, sometimes you're gonna have to jump and dodge and shoot the things that are being shot at you. That's okay. This may not come important too soon, but you know, when these Rinkas are coming at you, maybe jumping here will have helped you for positioning in the Mother Brain fight. Perhaps, maybe, who knows? But platforming and shoot, because a lot, like, you gotta remember, games were new back then. There weren't too many games where you had to jump and shoot above, to your left, underneath you, diagonal to the right, diagonal to the left, diagonal down, in an omnidirectional way.
Yeah, that was another great like gameplay innovation from 2 to Super Metroid, of just being able to shoot in any direction, having that freedom.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure, like, on a like how good the boss fights in SM are. Like, they're not bad,
No,
but
on
they
the first
really leave a strong impression.
Yeah,
is
they
what
really
I'm saying.
do.
Like,
Because
nobody's gonna forget Kraid. Nobody's gonna forget Crocomire, even though he's
A
the
joke.
boss fight's almost nothing. But that watching his ass melt is like
Oh my
nobody
God.
forgot that shit.
like, here's the thing with Kraid, you walk into a room and you see nothing but spikes. You hear the ding 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 ding. Then here's bwah, bwah, and this is the first time you hear that song in the game. You're like, wait, what's going on? And you just see this crown start crowning out of the ground of spikes. Like, you see eyes, and you're like, oh, okay, all right, he's pretty big, but I can handle it.
Screams at you.
And he starts screaming, he's shooting rocks, and he's just out here just sitting there, walking back and forth, poking you with his claw, and you're like, oh, okay, this is nothing. And then you shoot him a couple times, and then his eyes flash, and then he goes, and then he stands up, and you're like, wait a minute. Why is he that big? You mean this was just the torso, and the whole thing's the Kraid? All right, then you're jumping, and then now he's shooting feet, he's shooting claw missile boomerangs, and you're just like, I don't know what's going on. Then you kill him, and then let's be honest, when you're younger or the first time you play through it, maybe you're not expecting it, but that man really sounded like he's going through it when he dies. Like, he sounds like a dog has been punched in the throat and he's whimpering. Like, he's like, and then he just descends into the ground, and then you claim your item. You're like, wow, that was something. That was something very, very interesting. Then you talk about, Kraid, Crocomire. When you go down there to Crocomire's lair, you literally come down a vertical door. And then it's just, bwah, bwah, and you hear the music again. And then you see this thing whose skin looks like it's already melting and peeling. It is horrifying. And he has the most disjointed, like, elbow bone. It looks like something out of Doom. You are like, it's got 4 eyes and they don't blink at the same time. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. They do not blink at the same time. This man is creepy.
I don't think I ever looked that close at the sprite animation.
And then, obviously, you're shooting him, but he doesn't change colors. And you're like, Jesus, how much damage I got to do? And then you get him to the edge of the platform, he falls, and his skin starts peeling, and then he jumps back on screen. Like, very memorable. Ridley, you fight him twice, and the first time, Healy just kidnaps the baby Metroid and just dips out.
And kicks your ass.
Yeah, and well, obviously after the shellacking that you received trying to fight him, then he flies towards the screen, which is an effect that, let's be honest, back that you didn't see too much.
Mm-hmm.
He flew into the
Shit was
background and then
wild.
flew into the screen. We were like, whoa, all right, that dude. And then the place starts blowing up. So then when you see him for the rematch, and that man takes every piece of your arsenal, and in some cases, especially on your first playthrough, you definitely don't have 100% of the items. You may be just a smidge underprepared, but the game has prepared you to dodge attacks and use your charge beam and to be smart, that eventually you can win the battle of attrition and move on. So it feels like a giant hurdle and an accomplishment when you beat him. Then you have Dragon, and if you don't know about the quick kills, which you wouldn't on your first playthrough, you're like shooting at him, you're like, all right, this is fine. And then he starts putting the spunk gunk on the screen, and then you get picked up. And folks, if you didn't know to mash, you were in for a very bad time. And a lot of people would time sink themselves into that. So I believe every boss makes an impression except for two. And they both share the same music. I don't know if that was by choice or by chance. But Botwoon and Spore Spawn, those are two forgettable bosses.
Yeah.
And they share the same song, which I think that's got to be fate.
They're sort of considered mini bossish.
Yeah, but so is Crocomire.
Oh, true.
And that man left an impression.
Like, the most memorable thing about those fights is the music, I think, because that music is like, I don't know, it like claws at your brain. It's very like anxiety inducing.
Yep.
And like it's a good musical score. But now y'all may have been saying, but wait, man, you talked about really good bosses, but you're missing one. Oh yeah, Phantoon, aka the GOAT, aka you better not shoot that man with a super missile and not be prepared.
As a kid, Phantoon fucking
killer
kicked my ass.
Because you go in there and there's no power. So like usually for a lot of people, the last time you saved the game was at your gunship.
Mm-hmm.
So you're making your way over there, you're going down, and you're like, man, it seems so desolate. Like there's no enemies here. That's weird. And then you just see this weird decrepit skull thing, and you're like, whoa, what the hell? Ghosts. I won't say anything about ghosts. So you said, oh man, finally an eye door. At least I can get the hell away from this ghost. And then, oh my God, it's another ghost. And at that point, if you're reading this message, it's already too late because Phantoon he gives you the dick. That man bodies you hard because you're not there. There's nothing in the game that prepares you for him. That man is the one like shock value, shock and awe. The game has changed.
The wrecked ship is very weird in that. Like it seems so strange compared to the rest of the game.
But I also,
so.
but
yeah.
it was deliberately that way because it's like, yeah, remember, it's a wrecked ship, which means it's a ship that wasn't even meant for here, which means the ship in and of itself is alien to the alien planet.
Yep.
So having it being 100% feel different to the rest of the game, but still using a lot of the core gameplay mechanics to its advantage, I think was a really great idea. Especially due to the fact that when the power turns on, there's, obviously new puzzles that actually work with platforms, the robo dudes, and obviously, the treadmills and stuff like that, which, let's be real here, guys. The wrecked ship was small for a reason.
Oh, speaking of the wrecked ship, I love how the door, after you grab the gravity suit, just drops you straight into the water.
Yeah, because you're like, no, not the what? Wait a minute.
So good. I love it.
Because the best part about it is the room that leads to gravity suit doesn't allow you to go back. It makes you find out. You don't get a choice but to find out. And conveniently enough, remember what I said about the world being crafted in a way that makes it to where you learn the game just by playing the game? So the room after that is the Grapple Room, where, let's face it, a lot of beginner players are just going to fall into the water again anyway. And they're going to be like, oh, so it gives you 2 chances to learn about the water. Back to back. And remember how at first you thought, oh, I can't get across until I get, something that allows me to interact with those blocks up top. The grapple beam. Now you have grapple beam, you get across the next room, your gravity suit, you're thrown into the water twice. That is great level design. That is great gamesmanship. Deer Force needs to get the credit that they deserve, because many of the things you could say they got lucky with, but some of it was like, nah, this was too meticulously crafted for me to believe that it was just luck that led them here. Because this game, because you got to remember, that door to gravity suit on the other side that throws you into the water is locked the entire game. Even once you get gravity suit, you still can't go back through that door.
Yeah.
And since the game doesn't have, respin, you kind of, unless you preemptively jumped, you're falling straight down. So yeah, I do believe that the game does a great job in teaching you the mechanics as you play, which a lot of games don't, but I do believe a lot of games should look more into doing.
I think Super Metroid is the first game in the series that gets better every time you play it.
That is another thing we have to acknowledge. Like, there is a difference between the first play and then the subsequent plays.
Because I do believe in like the subsequent plays, like in Metroid 2, let's face it, you're still killing all the Metroids. You still have to go to about 90% of the game the same way every time, because you can't even go further until you clear what's on the surface and work your way down. Now, the problem with stuff like that is the game can feel very samey on subsequent playthroughs. The difference with Super Metroid is if you get good enough at the game, you could be like, well, I don't want to fight Kraid right now. I can fight Ridley first. I can fight Dragon first. I can fight Phantoon first. You're not necessarily pigeonholed into fighting a very, predetermined set of enemies and doing things in a very predetermined order. And there's various different routes that you could take throughout the planet. And obviously with sequence breaking and obviously little mechanic exploits and glitches like mockballing and things of that nature allow you to do a lot of these sequence breaks a lot earlier, a lot faster, and a little bit more optimal. And I do believe that the fact that nowhere in the game you can get soft locked, like, once again, I don't know if that was luck or if this was meticulously crafted, but the fact that you can, without gravity suit, go all the way through Meridia and back and get out, I think is a huge thing.
That is going to be one last thing I'll say is it's very meticulously designed, but I still to this day struggle accepting whether some of the exploits are purposeful. Mockball being one of the things where I'm
like I said, Mockball is the one I was like, I don't know. I feel like y'all couldn't have known, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, the physics system
a happy
allows
accident.
it. Yeah.
Because there's little quirky things about the physics system where it's like, there's no way they could have known about the pause jump or grapple remorph infinite jump. Like, But then there's also still that debug code that's left in the game for Gold Torizo that gives you a subset amount of super missiles and items that's left in the game. So who knows? Because that's still a thing. But ultimately, after that, it was a while before we got another Metroid game. But
fucking 8 years, was it?
Yeah, I think so.
It was roughly 8 years. And then we got 2 within a week of each other. One of which being Metroid Fusion and the other one being Metroid Prime 1. So which one would y'all like to talk about first, gentlemen?
Oh, let's ride this high to Prime 1 before we start being negative again.
Okay.
Well,
Prime 1, talk to me.
God, where to start with this? Prime 1...
That sounds really bad.
Prime 1 was what made me who I am today, in the sense of, like, even though I hardly do it that much anymore, I still love 3D art, and that's originally what I went to school for because of Samus in Prime 1. it just is the best she's ever looked. You will never convince me otherwise. Fuck all y'all.
Look, I'm gonna tell you right now what Prime 1, okay? I'm gonna tell you right now. I knew I was hooked into that game just when it started. And I don't mean like, oh, it was the perfect game crafted from beginning to end. What I mean is, you start off, you land on a desolate ship. I don't know if any of y'all are getting the Super Metroid flashbacks, but I think I've seen this story before. So you get off the ship, and the game 100. Now, this is probably one of the most hand-fisted tutorials of all time, but it teaches you about the scan visor. It teaches you how to move. It teaches you how to aim, and it feels very akin to, I don't know if you guys remember Halo, when you get out of cryo sleep, and then it's like, look left, look right, look up, look. It is in fact one of those. But once again, 3D games were not necessarily the most refined way of gameplay at that time. They were still trying to find their water legs a little bit, because I mean, let's face it, it wasn't too long ago where controlling a human being was still controlling a tank with tank controls. So
I mean, that's how Metroid Prime plays. I mean,
exactly,
I never thought about that.
because you don't
forward
move.
and backward, turn left and right.
Yeah, because you
That's how the
don't
control stick
move.
works.
Yeah, because you don't move with the secondary stick, because that is for beams. Like I said, a lot of things are left to be evolved from this point, but Metroid Prime starts off, all right, we understand, this is cool. You go through here, and then you see a little bit of life. You see these little parasite things crawling around. You're like, all right, it's a little weird, it's a little ominous. Then next thing you know, you see dead space pirates, and you're like, all right, it's weird. Then you see this dead, gigantic, fat parasite thing that's just on the floor, dead. And you're like, what is even happening here? Then you see a half-dead space pirate, rather than take his own life, start shooting at you from the I'm dying position. Like, he's sitting on the ground, aiming his blaster at you, but he has no strength to get up other than to shoot at you.
I might be dying, but fuck you.
Yeah, and then you kill him, and he just kind of goes, ugh. And you see a few more pirates like this as well. And it always feels like it's leading to something. And it just sets this tone of, this is how you aim. This is how you move. This is how, like, the rooms felt like they were crafted to teach you the mechanics of the game. Even so much to a point to where there's these 3 security doors that you have to morph into the middle of the room and go into this orange silhouette of a morph ball in order to activate them to unlock the doors. To showcase, hey, these orange things in the middle of the floor, yeah, if you see them, it's okay to morph into them, and it'll automatically activate some sort of technology on the ship. Now, from a lore-based perspective, I don't understand why space pirates are using that technology, but I digress.
We're not going to get into that.
We're not going to get into that, because you can talk about any game when you break it down to that level. But point is, game has this progression. You're fighting turrets. There's even like a little secret cutscene where, well, it's not a secret cutscene. There's a cutscene where the little parasites go through an air duct that show you a secret, and the secret turns out to be the map station. So now you're like, oh, okay, there's a map. Now you can see how the map is oriented, and now you can see that, okay, it's 3-dimensional. Like, it definitely gives you the building blocks to start piecing together how the 3rd dimension frontier is going to be fared by the Metroid series at this point. Because this is the first 3D Metroid game that we ever got. And I would argue that it's probably the best, and it was downhill from here, but we'll address that. So, you go to another room, and then you just see this gigantic orange power core generator looking thing in the middle of the ship, and you look at it, and then one of the best OSTs ever constructed by the Metroid Prime series starts playing, and now you're fighting a diabetic parasite that's got like rabies, and it's like, you know, it looks like a giant cockroach. This looks like some Starship Troopers nonsense going on here.
It really does, doesn't it? Now you say that.
And it crawls up, you start fighting it, and then after you kill it, it falls into the reactor, and then the ship starts a self-destruct sequence, and then you start sprinting away. You start running full speed, and once again, you find rooms that are crafted to teach you how to use the morph ball, teaching you how to platform. There are rooms that teach you about the grapple point and how to grapple, blah, 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 so on and so forth. Then you get a cutscene where you see Ridley, and then Ridley starts going like, "That's right, I'm back better than ever, and I'm metal." And then he flies away yet again. Once again, Super Metroid vibes are in full effect here. And then you get back to your ship and you leave. And the reason why I described the whole intro is because this game teaches you many of the mechanics that you will be using throughout the game, even if not immediately, at a very early stage of the game. It places the knowledge that you can do these things early on. So when you get some of the equipment that you lose, obviously, because this is one of those games where you lose all your equipment at the beginning of the game due to some sort of disaster. But once you require them one by one and, start, putting together your repertoire and your whole entire armory back together, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that. And then it also, obviously gives you a little bit of a quick tutorial with the little text box that pops on the screen on how to do the things. And even I believe in most of the cases, in the first room that you do them, as you approach the thing that new ability interacts with, the game will put like a little text box above the screen, like near your health, on what to do. So there's some familiarity, there's some repetition, and there's a guide that's done in a very minimalistic way and doesn't feel like the game is grabbing you by the throat and holding your hand, much like other games of that era. Press the B button in order to... And shut up, Omo Chow. No one asked you. No one asked.
Yeah, I'm probably stupid for just now realizing this, but hearing you describe the opening of Prime, it's very much like a parallel to the opening of Super Metroid.
Yep.
The frigate and the space colony are very sort of similar. And I think it's the frigate's a good choice because it gives the player an area to play around and learn the controls, learn how the game works without worrying too much about if they're gonna miss stuff or getting too involved in exploration and backtracking, that sort of stuff. That stuff comes later. It's just learn the game, play through this level. It gives you a taste of what is to come.
Yeah, because that one plays like a level as opposed to an open world adventure. That one just plays more like hey, you know what you're doing, learn what you're doing. All right, great job. High five.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, the game doesn't start until you're finally on the planet.
So then you end up on the planet, and once again, item progression, it works very similar to Super Metroid in terms of you get an item. There's usually a room that is very crafted and very tailored to using that item, or in some cases there will be for example, in Magmoor Caverns, there's a whole giant room that's real vertical, but you have no way of getting up there, but you see a whole bunch of these rails all over the room, and you're like, wow, what are these rails? And then you can scan them and it'll give you more information on the rails. It says something that is magnetic can probably ride along these rails, so you may be thinking you're getting a magnet. Then eventually, later in the game, you run into something called Spider Ball, which allows you to magnetically cling to the rails. The light bulb goes off, and you go, oh, I can use this. And there's a lot of items that feel that way. And I feel as though Metroid Prime is probably the best game in the Metroid series at this one particular thing. You get an item, and it's very obvious that you're going to need that item very soon in order to leave. For example, with the X-ray scope, the very room that you get the X-ray scope, you need to use the X-ray scope. When you get the thermal visor, there's an entire power outage that you now need to navigate using thermal vision as opposed to using regular vision because you won't be able to see anything in the dark. Thermal visor allows you to see power conduits and certain weaknesses of certain enemies. And these are things that the game teaches you in order from its most simple baseline mechanic of a new item to some of its most advanced stuff of a new item, which I think is, much a step in the right direction, even a step above of what you had in Super Metroid. Because in Super Metroid, that game does not teach you how to shine spark, doesn't even acknowledge bomb jumping as a thing. And I could be wrong. I don't think I am. But I don't think in the game there is anything that teaches you about powerbomb beam combos.
Oh God, no.
Yeah, I don't even think that's a thing
Demo,
that is
that's it.
acknowledged. And the funny
demo
thing
is
is
the only where it's acknowledged.
Oh yeah.
it acknowledged in the demo? Because I know
Yeah.
crystal
Mhm.
flashing is acknowledging in the demo.
I think it shows the ice beam combo. I forget what it shows.
But yeah, there's a lot of hidden mechanics that, obviously I believe some of them are actually in the guide to teach you how to do them. But like the actual enclosed instruction booklet that came with your game. I know y'all don't know nothing about that now. Those days are over.
I still don't know how to do shit like X Factor and stuff like.
I think X Factor is the wave beam one, right? You just equip the wave beam and charge. You have to disable all the other beams and highlight power bombs to charge up a shot.
Yeah.
Because it works with one beam only. Now, obviously, subsequent release ROM hacks now have it to where it just replicates whatever beam you have or whatever beam combo you have. So it'll be a whole combo and a whole smorgasbord of options. But we're not here to talk about ROM hacks. But Metroid Prime, I believe, has the best bosses in the series. Outside of arguably Dread. Dread might have eclipsed it. But I'm telling you right now, in Metroid Prime 1, we start off with absolute bangers. And by bangers, I mean we start off mid as hell. Because the first 3 bosses, I'm not going to lie, I was kind of worried that the bosses wasn't going to be good, okay? You want me to unpack this further? All right. The first one is literally a giant spinning fidget spinner that shoots wasps at you.
Yeah, it's not a good intro.
The
Not
second one is, and I quote, a giant beetle with a red ass. And all it does is go dash to the left, dash to the right,
Dash to the right.
squeal, and then charge at you.
Yep,
Now, granted,
every time.
the boss itself, not fun. But it does teach you a mechanic that a lot of people probably didn't know until they fought this boss. You can sidestep when you lock onto something. Because that's not something you probably have even thought about until the game made you do it.
Oh yeah, because you would try to jump out of the way, and so instead you would sidestep.
Yeah, and once again, that's great mechanics, great design. And even though it was a simplistic boss, it taught you a very valuable lesson. Now, you may be saying, well, what did the Hive Totem teach you? The Hive Totem taught you better hit the lock-on button. The lock-on button is important. It heavily enforced that early, which is why it's probably the first boss in the game, because they knew it was a very important mechanic that you're probably going to have to get used to. Because I'm not going to lie to you, I was one of those stupid people where I didn't want to lock on. I wanted to free aim. I wanted to, take everything in for what it was. And then I realized that that's not an option that's going to be afforded to me 9 times out of 10, especially with fast-moving targets. Then the third boss. And y'all already know how I feel about this boss. It's literally a wasp nest adhered to the roof and a giant robot that just lights it on fire on occasion to piss off the wasps. You fought wasps twice in the first 3 boss fights of the game. You fought a wasp hive, you fought a beetle, you only fought like a Beetleborg rhinoceros roach. Then you fought wasps again. And then every boss after that was pretty much a banger.
Yep.
Because you go up, you fight Flagra, and you see a big plant. You're like, what the hell's a big flower going to do? And then Scyther from Pokemon comes out, but it doesn't have any legs. It's just a giant plant with scythes on its hands. And you're like, oh, well, that's dangerous. Then you got to flip mirrors. Then after that, you're thinking that you're out of the woodworks. And then you know what happens? You know what your luck is at that point? You want to know what life becomes for you? It becomes absolute fucking pain. It's fucking miserable. It's fucking hellacious. Because after that, I think after that you fight Rockman, and I hate Thardus. I'm gonna tell you that right now. I hate him.
Fucking Thardus.
The roly-poly Rockman. I hate his face. And it's not that he's the most difficult thing.
At least one.
Like, I don't even think he's like difficult. Oh, all right. Yeah, you're right. Sheegoth is also big mid. But you know what else?
Sheegoth
Sheegoth is the big spike thing with the ice on its back. and you can only hit it sometimes when the game just decides to let you. To be honest, to this day, I actually don't know how the mechanic works. I know you have to shoot it in the gills, but you can't always shoot it in the gills because your shots get absorbed by the spikes on its back. But I wouldn't say that's a bad boss fight. I do believe it's a boss fight that does teach you that target priority matters. Because remember, it starts off with the door opening, or one of the doors opening, and it's one of the little baby she-goths. And then the next one, I think all three of them are loose. And then you have to, like, you know, obviously keep an eye out on the ones behind you. It basically teaches you to keep your head on a swivel from enemies that can do actual damage to you. And then the big mama shows him and says, "You killed me, kids!" Which, let's be honest, that kind of left an impression on you because you knew it was mad, you knew it was pissed, and you knew it could be big, but you didn't know it would be that big. Especially after you kill it, get the wave beam, and then you start seeing these things like as normal enemies in the wild. Because yes, this is one of those games where once you get, you know, a little bit of power creep in you, some of the bosses from before become regular enemies.
It's just like my Metroidvanias.
Oh boy. So there's that. Then obviously you have Thardus. The whole power outage like section.
Who comes after that? So all I can
What do you
think of is Omega Pirate. That's just because I like that fight.
Okay, so after Thardus, you then get
I was
the
stuck on Omega Pirate for weeks, maybe months when I was a kid. That boss fight kicked my ass.
Because after that, you had the Elite Pirates, which were the
Like
little
that, I think that was harder
prototype
for me than Metroid
Omegas.
Prime.
And then there was that one boss fight that no one likes to talk
Yeah,
about.
Omega Pirate can be a bastard.
There's that one boss fight that no one likes to talk about. Because I don't really consider it a boss.
Frosty
But...
die on us or something?
Oh, God. Did my microphone explode? Oh.
Oh, he's back.
Yeah. What? Okay, so no, Discord did that thing where it randomly just cuts me out. Like, my podcast, perfectly fine. OBS, perfectly fine. But for some reason, Discord just decides you don't get to talk anymore. It's really weird.
Huh.
But anyways, after She-Goth and Thardus, there's the Elite Pirates, which are basically just the Omega Pirate clones.
Oh, yeah.
And those are pretty fun because they basically teach you better remember these fights because it's going to become really important later. Very important later. Then there's a boss fight that I don't really count as a boss fight, but I guess it is because it is a special type enemy. It's the cloak drone that guards the power bombs. It's a little security drone, but this one can go invisible and has a shield. But then you have the Phazon Elite, which is a specialty Phazon version of the Elite Pirates. But then you have like probably the three best bosses in Metroid Prime, the entire trilogy. The Omega Pirate, which was super dope. Meta Ridley, which was super dope. And Metroid Prime itself, which obviously super dope.
Yep.
And I do think those three bosses tell a great story of Samus's character. Because the Omega Pirate shows up and she's like, whatever. I'ma still bop it. Don't matter. Meta Ridley shows. Go on.
That's not really annoying, because they try to give Samus a lot of attitude and dread, and it comes off in a really shitty way. But we'll get to that. But I just, yeah.
And then
saying about her characterization and cutscenes reminded me of that.
Yeah, she has a personality.
Yeah, but it was more like, this was like, all right, so this is what you guys have been working on. All right, I'm about that action. Let's get it. Meta Ridley shows up and she's like, at first she's kind of concerned because once again, this is Ridley again. But then she's just like, it is what it is. Then she got to work. And then Metroid Prime. Metroid Prime is a gigantic spider armored creature looking like a fortress. And it jumps down underground, and Samus just runs after it, bro.
No fear.
Like full on sprint, jumps down the hole. You will not escape.
Get the fuck back.
Get back here, bitch.
So, you know, obviously there's that. But out of the the bosses in the game total. You have Parasite Queen, which is great. Then you have three us. Then you have Flogger the Goat. You got Sheegoth, which is okay. You got Thardos, which I really liked. I don't know how y'all felt about it. I hated the roly-poly attack, but everything else was fine.
Yeah.
The Elite Pirates were cool. The Cloak Drone exists. The Phazon Elite, great. Omega Pirate, great. Meta Ridley, great. Metroid Prime, great. Now, here's the issue. And this is the big issue that a lot of people have had with this game. Because
oh boy, no, hold on. I know what you're going to talk about. Oh wait, I forgot about what they're called. Damn it, this bit's over.
Yeah, wow, this man is throwing for content.
You really ramped it up there and then just threw it all away.
Because I was like, oh shit, what are they called again? Fuck.
The artifact quest at the end of the game.
There we go.
And look, I will give you this. I understand that y'all may not like the backtracking, especially for something that doesn't give you any sort of strength and no upgrades and things of that nature. And I believe finding them for the most part is relatively easy, except for one. There is one I will give y'all. This is a complaint. I will let y'all have this complaint as an actual complaint. There's one in the Phendrana Drifts where you got to like aim off into the distance through this crack in the wall and shoot a missile at a thing, and then the thing falls and the tower breaks the floor. I'll give you that one was a stretch.
Yeah.
All the other ones seem like the hints seem relatively simple enough. But that one I will give you, all right, bit of a stretch, mate. But ultimately, I would much rather do this one's fetch quest than Metroid Prime 2. So I'm going to tell you that right now. Prime 2's makes me, I'm quite tight. Quite tight.
I think the time you're going to have with artifact collecting in Prime 1 is whether you are aware of the artifact hunt, early on in the game, because you do have the option to go to the crater, like the entrance to the crater, and like see the pillars there, and I think you can scan like a few of them at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, you scan a few, and if you get a certain number, then you can scan the rest.
Yep.
Yeah. And so you can be aware of the artifact hunt and find a few of them as you play the game before you get to the point where it's like, okay, now I need to get inside the crater. Versus if you don't know about it or you just ignore it, and then you've got to go find like all 12 of them in a row.
Because that is pain. But you see, the thing with Metroid Prime 2 is you're not given that option.
Nope.
Because in Metroid Prime 2, you're led to believe that the only key temple keys that you have to do are the key temple that you're currently trying to get to the boss of. Now, I'm not saying that you can't find them, but they require you to take acid baths into a suit that you do not have until it's time to go find the Sky Temple keys. Very different ball game there, but once again, we'll get there when we get there. But yeah, Metroid Prime, fine game. Does a lot of things right.
Baller.
It does teach you about underwater movement and the perils of it, especially when you have to go into the frigate Orpheon when it crashes.
Another wrecked ship allegory.
A lot of Super Metroid things in this game. Is that why we like it? Oh no, were we biased?
Oh, Prime 1 references Super quite a bit.
I mean, yeah, there's a whole secret area that you get after destroying all the statues.
That's probably why it's a good game.
Yeah, you finally go underground in that secret area, and then you fight a Metroid as the final boss. I mean, it makes sense. Then the planet starts to self-destruct, and you got to fight your way out, and then yeah. Bada ba boopy.
That's Metroid Prime 1.
I mean, in a nutshell, it once again, it elevated a lot of the formula from Super, and it honestly, in and of itself, I'll admit to some people, it does have a slow start. I'll give you that. But I do believe that the environments are very cohesive. They actually work in order to teach you the mechanics of the game. There's advanced techniques that are allowed to, let the player find things not only earlier, faster, more efficiently. Well, a lot of the stuff that's like crazy is completely optional. Like double bomb jumping, you don't ever really have to do that. That's more like for 100% things. So, that's cool. Then you have Prime. Excuse me, can't even go straight to Prime 2. We got to talk about Metroid Fusion. Now, Metroid Fusion, this is Sora. This is more Sora's baby here in terms of what he wants to talk about because he's got a lot to say. So I will make mine very brief. Metroid Fusion is a game that I feel is aggressively mid, not because it's a bad game, but because it's a game that I believe has a lot of great, and I mean great, pieces of lore, like the sacks, the fact that there's a parasite out there that only the Metroids were even created to deal with. I do feel as though like there's a lot of cool things in the game. However, I do feel like the fact that we lost the movement, like we lost the movement. Like the movement feels very stiff. It makes the game feel like, I don't necessarily want to say like it's dated, but it definitely makes the game feel a lot less fluid than obviously its predecessor. And I do think that it's a game that, while once again has a lot of good ideas in it, the environments do not necessarily lead to teaching you the game. I feel as though the world itself doesn't really do much in terms of, allowing you to fully experience what the traditional Metroid experience is up to this point. I feel like the level design in a lot of areas is questionable. And if we're being honest, the bosses in Metroid Fusion are ass.
There's a couple good, but yeah, there's some fucking stinkers in there.
Because I could be wrong. But if I remember right, in Metroid Prime, see, I just want to get straight to Prime 2 because I have so much stuff I want to say about that game. But that's not where we are right now. When it comes to Metroid Fusion, you get Arachnus, which is just a remake of a Metroid 2 boss, whatever. Then you get I really don't want to talk about him. Elephant Bird. Now you may be saying, what in the fuck is Elephant Bird? Elephant Bird is literally just the Chozo statue thing that turns to an X-Parasite. I think that's how you get Charge Beam. Y'all know what I'm talking about.
Oh, what is that? Yeah.
Then you have Zazabi. And you may be saying, what the fuck is Zazabi and why the fuck do you even know what that thing's name is? Zazabi is the fucking like condom that jumps.
That tries to eat you.
Yeah,
the killer condom.
Yeah, the killer condom. Yeah, there you go. Then you have
a real
Ceres.
movie that exists, by the way.
Oh god. Then you have Ceres. Ceres is all right. Like Ceres is cool. That's the speed booster boss.
Yep.
Then you have the security robot fight, which the first one is whack. The second one is just as whack, if not more, and annoying with electric water. Then you have the X-Parasite that can download suits, apparently. Then you got
the core X where they like drag the corner of the sprite just to enlarge it. Like it looks so bad.
Yeah, and then you got you got Bill Nye the Science Guy, the X guy who's a scientist. Then you got hello, I'm Dragon. If Dragon was no longer a shrimp but a spider instead. Then you have
the one memorable boss.
Wait, no.
We're not there yet.
No, we're not there yet. You have the Chozo statue that's stuck in the weeds.
Weed.
I believe that's how you get plasma, but it's literally a golden Chozo statue or some sort of I guess it wouldn't be a statue because it has to be a living creature. So it's some sort of cocoon.
It's
of
like
something.
a spore spawn fight.
Yeah, but spore spawn moved. This thing doesn't even move. It's like fighting. It's like breaking the mother brain jar. The fight.
Yeah.
Again.
Actually, that's a better one.
And then you beat that, and then whatever. Then there's what everyone calls the best fight in Metroid history. Some people will go as far as say it's such an interesting fight, and it's called Nightmare. And don't get me wrong, Nightmare is set up perfectly. Like you walk in there, you find the whole sector's destroyed. You hear there's a thing going on a rampage, and then you hear whoosh, you see the shadowy figure stalking you as you're going through the area. and then it looks really large, and then when you finally get into a room, like they do a great job because you get into the room through crumble blocks. Like you get into this fight, like, oh god, maybe I don't want to be here.
The sound it makes too when it moves, the shadow moves across the screen too. That wah, 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 wah. Like,
Yeah.
that's great.
And then you get in there, and when I tell you that this fight is ass, and I don't mean that the fight itself is like the worst thing in the game, but when I tell you, you guys got to stop gassing this dude up, because this thing gets gassed up by the image that's on the screen right now. Y'all see that? You see that ugly face? That is what y'all remember. The fight itself is you shoot it in the gravity testicle, and then you climb on this ladder, and you point to the right.
Yep.
That's the entire fight. And then when he gets too close, he goes, oh, my mistake. And then he backs up. And then you just jump back on the ladder and aim to the right. That's the entirety of the fight. And I know what you're thinking. Well, you're kind of minimalizing it. Am I? Because his only attack, to my knowledge, is he shoots these little, like, Papega French fries from his arms. That's the attack. And provided you're sitting at head level, these don't even hit you. So yeah, you point to the right. That's the entirety of the fight. Not really a memorable boss. He just kind of exists. No, everything that builds up to him is great. And then you get there and there's no climax.
Like,
Blue balled again.
You know, something I'd never noticed about Nightmare either, looking at his official artwork, there seems like he has a mask on, you know, when you first start fighting him.
Yep.
And the mask has like a mouth that looks like it's been sewn shut.
Yeah.
What the fuck is that about? What's going on there?
You're like, what's the story behind the lore there? I don't know. I honestly couldn't tell you.
Why is the mask sewn shut? It's not even his actual mouth.
Because the thing that I find really weird about like his sprite, like since you're talking about the mouth being sewn shut, is that like he has simulated pupils. Like eyes that are simulated pupils. But he has like 6 eyes when the mask breaks. So it's like, can it see? Is it aware of the problem?
This thing is a military weapon too, right? Like,
yeah. And it's supposed to be able to change the pressure in gravity. I mean, your guess is as good as mine on what its practicality uses are, because
the more I'm thinking about it, the less it makes sense.
Like, this was a designed thing. Like, this isn't just, you know, happy accident of biology.
But the X-Parasite probably made it decrepit. So, for all we know, this is a normal creature that's usually under here. And then the X-Parasite infected it. But we don't get that excuse because Other M made sure to make sure that loose end is answered. Because it still looks like primordial ooze in there. But there's no X-Parasites in Other M. So, I really couldn't tell you. They just kind of came up with their own rules on that one. But alas, it is a thing that exists. But yeah, the bosses from top to bottom, increasingly mid. Obviously, you have the Proto Ridley X fight, which is just...
It's just a war of attrition.
Is it though? Because like... that Ridley hardly gets a chance to move because you just run up on it, unload, and all you hear is... And I was like, I don't know who decided to make that sound, but that is absolutely terrible.
My fucking ears.
And then the final boss is literally just... it's literally just aim up at a 45-degree angle. You'll figure it out. And the boss before that is yeah, guys, we really wanted to bring you guys the terror of an SAX mirror match, but we didn't have either the time or the skill to make a cohesive Samus versus Samus boss fight. So now it's just going to turn into a Bloodborne monster. Spaghetti monster. And there you go. Those are all the bosses in the game are whack. Top to bottom.
So,
But the floor is yours.
If you could re-edit a game, there was a good game hiding in Fusion, but my god, it is bogged down by refusing to accept that it's a Metroid game. Why is it so linear?
So, see, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. I understand that I'm going to be devil's advocate here against my better judgment, but I'll be devil's advocate here. Metroid Fusion is supposed to be the perversion of the Metroid, like, mythos, I guess you would say. I believe the intent was you're no longer the hunter, you're the hunted. It's supposed to flip the entire story on its head. It's supposed to be more, you're working towards a narrative goal while you have to avoid a thing that's predatory, because now you're going to learn what it feels like to be hunted and how you aren't given a choice and how an only way to do that and blah, 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 blah. And I believe that this is one of those weird 50-50 power moves that some game developers make, where there's going to obviously be an audience that is going to be all in. Like, this is big, meaty claws. Like, this is what they signed. Like, this is the good shit. Meanwhile, people are going to be in the camp that we're in, and we're just like, you took away the movement. You took away the ability to have subsequent playthroughs really mean anything. You stifled the ability to have, particular movements throughout the layout of, the world. And then number 4, and this is probably the biggest of them all, you made it to where we are pigeonholed into doing things in a very specific order every single time. And the combination of all this really starts to stifle the player's ability to, let's just face it, improve as a player. Like, the way you move in Metroid Prime, the way you do things in Prime, hell, obviously the way you do things in Super, the way you do things in Zero Mission, it changes the more you play the game. This game, not so much.
And that was always the fun of these games. Feeling that change in power, whether it be movement, strength, fucking agility, just all this shit. You just become this beast. And in Fusion, that never necessarily happens. You certainly get stronger, but I never feel better with movement.
I also feel like the rooms never really have that, like, eureka moment of, oh, with this subset of equipment, now this room plays different. Like, I feel like every room is still, it's just generic platform. Jump, climb the ladder, jump, climb the ladder. Maybe you wall jump off this one. But every now and then you might find a shortcut where it's like, before you had to bomb all these blocks. Now you just let off a power bomb. But there's never anything that, and this is one thing I give Dread huge props for. There'll be a room that's designed in a way that you may think is a little bit confusing, or you may think that, obviously it still flows. It feels more like a puzzly room. Then you get Speed Booster, and then you find out half the walls were Speed Booster blocks all along. And with Speed Keep and wall jumps, you're able to, like, oh, this is the path the room really wants. And now you just feel, different because the room layout is the same, but it's different. And that never really happens in Fusion.
Yeah.
And Fusion has this, I don't want to say it's taxing, but it does get on my nerves, where the game goes, Samus, go directly to this dot on the map, nowhere else.
You are literally not allowed to go anywhere but this fucking route.
And there are some cases where the game will go out of its way to just start locking doors to force you to go to that place.
Yeah, they try to, like, pretend, like, oh, this is a Metroid game because you got to go find the security room. We're not going to mark that on the map for you. Go find it, asshole. But there's always like one route you can go that will take you to the security room, and everything else is blocked off by the doors that you open when you enter the security room.
I feel like there's two moments where it's like the epitome of everything I have wrong with Fusion, and it's the same two problems. Why did they incorporate event flags into a Metroid game? I have to walk all the way to the security gate only for it to be like, warning, you need secure whatever the shit it says, and then I walk all the way back, and now I have the second fight with the robo security motherfucker. And that happened the first time when you meet him, you have to go one way. So, oh, nothing happens. Go back, and then all of a sudden he shows like,
Mm-hmm.
why?
It's so like antithetical to Super Metroid's like core design of just you don't put event flags like that in a Metroid game. It's so dumb.
Like I was like, I wouldn't mind event flag bosses if it was like pivotal to the story. Like, let's say there's an area that we go through, right? And we've been going through this area all game. Like, you can even have it be like the little nexus of elevators, right? And then like we eventually get an upgrade, and then like you have Adam Robot go, "Hey man, you've been spending a lot of time in this area, even if you weren't. Let's just the computer would just say that you have." And then like the sacks are starting to convene on this area, and then like obviously because you got your event flag set, you go to a specific room that you've been traversing through the entire time, but all the enemies are dead. And then you get to the bottom, and then a door that was basically a one-way path that you went down for one specific thing, like obviously something that you would never go back to, that door gets destroyed and like debris falls, and then it plays a little cutscene of the sacks walking out of the debris and then giving you a chase sequence. That would be fine.
Yeah.
I think that, if you wanted to keep the security robot, I think they should have let you go behind the gate, and then the gate should have shut. And then you go back there, and then you see the sacks is wilding out. Shooting all the Metroids. And then, like, let's just say back there's like a door that's like, locked. So you have to bomb your way, and now you're going through a security access tunnel. And then there's a missile in there, or, maybe not necessarily, like, we won't put a progression item here. We'll put like a missile or something, or an energy tank. And then you fall down, so you got some progress, you got an item, you got some lore that the Sax is going crazy. And now you find out that they sent the security robot to go get you because the Sax is doing all that over there. Now you have a reason to understand that the Galactic Federation, or the BSL, truly believes that they have augmented this thing to kill the Sax. The problem is, obviously, with the lore that I believe that it's infected by X, because the X can mimic data and digital inputs. So you can also interpret it as the Sax was so busy dealing with the primary apex predator of the X that it requested backup from the security robot, and you just so happen to run into it on its way there. That too would also be fine.
Anything better is better than what they did. And also there's two situations in that area back to back where you have to walk forward, trigger an event flag, and walk backwards, because you do that after you get through the shutter, and then you go up through the area with the test tubes and all the Metroids, and you go up to the top room, and there's nothing there, and then you go back down, and that's when you see the SAX freaking out, shooting all the Metroids. Like, it's just, ugh.
Because, all right, so the thing that, like, I thought was, like, really weird, at least to me, you guys may not have thought it was too weird, but they showcase that the X have the ability to download data and download memories. And we obviously know that makes them dangerous, but when you have an entire ship that is made up of digital things, and you have little data centers where you can download items, like, that's another thing that I think is really silly. is that there are download rooms where you can download missiles. Like, no, they literally digitize missiles into your suit, and now you can shoot missiles because you downloaded them, which I think is a very weird and, dare I say, arbitrary game mechanic. But then they introduce into the lore that the X parasites can also download things from data centers, which means they can get your powers, your suits, your missiles. And it's like, how are they not just immune to everything then? Because if they are a hive mind and they can interact with digital terminals, they should be able to know every time Adam speaks.
Yes. Fusion was the straw that broke the camel's back on my suspension of disbelief. I'd never really questioned how a monster has a missile when I kill it. Whatever, I'm just grabbing some missiles. But once you start doing words like, oh, Samus, you have to go to the download center and download some missiles, now you got me like, what the fuck does that mean? And I get how making the X parasites compatible with digital elements makes them way scarier. At the same time, you're on a ship with digital computers controlling everything. The X would have had that ship under control in seconds.
Mhm.
I agree. And like, don't get me wrong, I know suspension of disbelief is a thing that, like, you know, a lot of games just expect you to have. But like, it's different when you have suspension of disbelief when it's just like, okay, well, how does this character jump over a building? But you know, whatever. It's different when they make the jumping over the building the lore. When it's actually something that you're supposed to take on faith with actual quote unquote information to back it up. Because now it just doesn't make sense as a whole.
Yeah, I think Fusion's really the game that like split the Metroid fan base,
Mm-hmm.
because there's people like us who are diehard SM fans, and we love the non-linearity of that game, the freedom that the structure allows. And then there are people that really love Fusion, and they really don't like the less linear Metroid games that have more backtracking and stuff. They're always complaining about that kind of shit.
Because obviously we know that they had that the X parasite obviously would have to have the ability to mimic, you know, digital, you know, stuff like that. But the issue with that, right, is it also mimicked your human parts to control the suit. It wasn't an empty suit with goo coming out of it, you know? So it's like, well, did they even need to do the person part if they could control digital stuff that well? But obviously, you know, with the asexual, you know, reproduction, it's always really weird because, like, if the X are a hive mind, as they say in the lore, you know how like an X parasite will get killed by something, and then like it'll like immediately transform, like they flash white and then they transform into another enemy. Why don't they just transform into the sacks? If they can do it, there's 10 of them on the ship.
Yeah.
Oh, that
Like-
line is so dumb.
And it's like, you know, and then it's like, for there to be 10 sacks on the ship, we only have like what, 3 encounters with it. There's the first encounter where you run from it with the power bombs, and there's the second encounter where you run through it with the shutter gates, and then I think the third encounter is, well, it's technically not even an encounter. You see it coming down the elevator, so I guess the third encounter would be the fight. And it's like with 10 on the ship, I feel like you could have leaned on it maybe a couple more times. Like, don't do what Metroid Dread did, where they leaned on this Emmy thing and it just did not have the gravitas to be something you see over and over again. All right, like that was a little weak sauce, but
I think there's a couple more SAX encounters, because there's the first time you see it when it blows up the wall by the elevator. Second time when you drop down into that room and it's walking underneath you. Third time I think is when it blows up a power bomb and you have to like roll to the left underneath the floor to stay away from it. And then you've got 2 chase sequences, I believe.
There's the one in the Arctic sector where you have to wait for it to set off, or either you set off a power bomb or it's, and then you have to outrun it to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's obvious, and that's the one with the shutter gates. That's the one I was talking about. And then there's the, if you want to count it as an encounter, there's the restricted laboratory, no access without authorization.
Yeah.
And then there's the fight. So I mean, there might be like 5.
And I think that's a good amount. Like, I don't think the SAX never threatens of overstaying its welcome in the game.
But I think you only get to interact with it twice outside of the actual boss fight.
Unless you're silly and you don't hide under it when it power bombs like I did the first time.
Yeah, you have the option to like run into it and get killed, but
What a tragic option. Why would you choose that option? I mean, if you don't know, then you wouldn't know, I guess, right?
Is there anything else to really say about Fusion? It's just, yeah.
There's like a quarter of a good Metroid game in there. That's what I've said many times about Fusion. There's like a quarter of a good Metroid game in there, and then there's just a bunch of like linear bullshit that
a lot of close no cigar.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a fair assessment. Like, once again, I don't think Fusion is like a terrible, awful game. I just feel like it does so much to where you think you're about to get over the hill to something great, and then it just dies. Like, the idea of whatever you're doing just dies. Like, it doesn't ever come to that point where you're like, yeah.
Can we also say what they did to wall jumping in that game is fucked?
Yeah, it is pretty bad. Because, once again, they stifle the movement to stop you from sequence breaking. And it's like, not the sequence break in a Metroidvania game. That's almost sacrilege. But, you know, many people say that was to the game's benefit because it stops them from getting lost and confused, etc. I was like, come on, man. The game gives you the map every time you enter a new area at the nav station. I think you'd have been fine. And in comparison to the scope and the size of the maps in previous Metroid titles, you'd have been fine.
Yeah.
But then after that, I think we have to skip all the way, to 2004 for Prime 2? So, honestly, Sora, it's yours. Everything you want to do. Go.
The first missile's in a fucking box! Oh, that pissed me off so much that I never played it as a kid. Because I'm like, where the fuck's the missile? Oh, just shoot these fucking crates.
Like, yeah, it wasn't very, what's the word? It wasn't much of an intuitive thing that they're just sitting there in the middle of, some debris. But alas, go ahead. I know you have plenty to say about this game.
I get what Prime 2 tried to do. It was really a neat idea to have, a light and a dark. That was the thing back then. Fucking Zelda Twilight Princess. Fucking, I bet some other games back in that day fucking did the same shit. And it was an easy way to reuse assets and be smart about it. But, oh my god. Especially if you were playing it back in the day on a GameCube. If you're playing it on an emulator or on the Wii, thank God it doesn't take that long to load. But the transitions still have that cutscene that take like 5, 6, 7 seconds every time. And boy, you're going to be transitioning from light to dark to light to dark to light to dark, traversing the same areas over and over again. And it makes me hurt.
My biggest complaint about Metroid Prime 2 is I feel like a lot of it just felt like busy work. Because while in the predecessing game, Metroid Prime 1, a lot of the backtracking you didn't feel like busy work until you had to do the artifact quest, obviously.
Yes.
But usually it felt like I got an item, I progressed. Now, if I go back to these rooms can either be traversed in a new way or faster. Some cases opening up shortcuts or leading to elevators that take me to new areas altogether. that I haven't been to before. And that's what most of the backtracking felt like in, especially in Phendrana Drifts and Magmoor Caverns. You get power bombs, you go back to that tower area. Now you can power bomb, you can find an artifact, a power bomb expansion. If you learn how to double bomb jump, you can get an extra E-tank. Like, there was various, not just advanced techniques, but new things that allowed you to access new areas. With Metroid Prime 2, it felt like I didn't really need to come backtrack at all until the game told me that I had to backtrack, but it did that a lot. There's a difference. One, you could just come back and do at your leisure. The other one, it just felt like, no, now you just got to come back to this room and you have to do it this way. And there's no other way to circumvent that in any way, shape, or form. And I'm not necessarily saying that this is like a terrible thing or that Metroid Prime 2 is some, tragedy, but it gets to a point to where, and I don't know if any of you feel the same way about this, once you get the gravity boost, you pretty much just use the gravity boost to get out of Lower Torvus Bog, and I don't really know if you ever use it again.
I don't think you do.
And
It's like
maybe
spin boost.
and it's like, and maybe you do when you do the artifact hunt, because there is times where you have to dive under the magma, the purple magma Kool-Aid juice, in order to snag some of the Sky Temple keys for the end of the game, key hunt. But once again, when in comparison to the first game, the key hunt, there's a couple of them that you just get by playing the game. If you just so happen to go up there at the beginning of the game or somewhere in the midpoint of the game, and you're like, oh, I need to find these artifacts. All right, that's cool. And now you're at least tipped off. You at least can acknowledge that they exist. And then you can go grab them. The problem with Metroid Prime 2 is the only time you're really thinking about Sky Temple keys or Temple keys in general is when you have to find the 3 red keys in order to open up the boss arena for that area of the map, whether it be Sanctuary Fortress, Agon Waste, Torvus Bog, and the fourth one escapes me right now, but you guys know what I'm talking about. And those are the keys that you think you have found. And then you find all those keys, and at the end of the game it said, nope, you got to find 12 more. That's a little tilting, I'm not gonna lie. Because there's no, to my knowledge, YouTube comment section, I know you got a lot of, good creative minds out there, maybe you guys know. Is there any point where you can get to that area early, the right before, the Emperor Ing? Is there any part of the game where you get to that place early and find out that there's even more keys that you're going to need to open up this new area beforehand? Like, hey, maybe it's on a scan of one of those random Chozo artifact doors. Maybe. It could happen. But alas, I just think it's weird that they would do it in that way.
Oh, also beams have ammo.
Look, beams
Couldn't
having
let that go.
Look, beams having ammo is not where like beams make me sad. Okay. A beam having ammo, while I could see why that's annoying, I do understand that it's a new level of resource management, but it's energy related, and as they said, dark and light energy are their own limited resources, blah blah blah. I get it, whatever. I never really had a problem with the ammo system. I'll tell you what I had a problem with. I had a problem with, this isn't dark and light at all. The light beam is just the plasma beam from the first game, and the dark beam is just the ice beam from the first game. These were just beams reskinned with the exact same utilities that they had in the previous game, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but now you're just telling me that you just put an ammo system and just tacked it on without bringing any new features to the table. Now, you may be saying, oh yeah, but what about the beam combos? Well, in the first game, you had a flamethrower, you had super missiles, you had the ice spreader, and you had the wave buster, which is basically like an electroshock super long form taser. All right, cool. These are different things with practical uses that are super effective on certain enemies and not too effective on other enemies, blah, 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 so on and so forth. You get it. However, in this game, it's the dark hole, the white hole, and the sound hole. Like, that's like, it's not like I feel like the creative juices like stop flowing for a lot of pieces of this game. Now, that being said, as you said earlier, when you were talking about how it's, a good idea to be able to reuse assets by having a light and dark world, but some of the light and dark world puzzles were not meant for a system that didn't load the light and dark world very quickly. For example, there's a room, and I believe it's either for a visor or it's for a screw attack. But there's a room in Sanctuary Fortress where you have to go through like 4 or 5 different portals to unlock 4 and 5 small different little like subspace boost ball puzzle things and get them all in order. And you have to like watch the cutscene like 3 to 5 times in order to get back to the right side. And then you're able to get your progression item. Like, this isn't an item for 100%. This is an item that you need in order to beat the game.
And that's ignoring the 100% items that do that same shit. Because I swear there's a missile in whatever the robotic fortress area is called again,
Sanctuary
where you have to go
Fortress.
through a portal like 4 to 5 times in quick succession.
And the other thing I think is a little bit annoying about the game's just design as a whole is like a lot of it seems very like, we talked about Fusion being linear. Like, let's be honest. Once you got done with Agon Waste and then you moved on to the next area, you didn't really do anything in Agon Waste anymore.
Nope.
Agon Waste might be the only one where you like come through sometimes to clear stuff, but like after you beat Torvis Bog, beat the Alpha Blog, and moved on, outside of the end game, find the Sky Temple Keys quest in the Dark World, you weren't really coming back through these places like that. Not unless, obviously, you went through an area, killed the boss, and then it just dropped you off back in this area. But other than that, backtracking was not like a huge thing. And even when it was, you were more just dumped off in an area that you've already been in, as opposed to having the backtrack to, expand your horizons on an area that you've been to previously. Which I think is a little bit disappointing. Then obviously you do have your favorite discussion post, the bosses, but I'll talk about those in a second.
It also... Oh, sorry.
I just about the bosses, so I'll let you guys finish what you're talking about.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's one of the few Metroids where I wouldn't say you feel underpowered, but the upgrades feel horizontal instead of vertical. If you don't know what I mean by that, vertical meaning like, oh, this is just X but better. You're literally just getting more number or more power or something like that. There's a lot of, albeit sometimes interesting, upgrades, and 2, they're not really used all that much, and they're just kind of shallow, and you don't get that powerful feeling at the end really until you get the light suit, and by that time you're done with the game and you're searching for the fucking temple keys.
Because let's be honest, when you get the in the original Metroid Prime, when you get the wave beam, you're like, all right, this is kind of good, but it just feels like Power Beam Plus.
Yep.
A little bit of a slower fire rate. Then you get the ice beam. You're like, okay, now we have a little bit of CC. We got a little bit of crowd control. I can freeze things. I can hold them in place and then make them vulnerable with the missiles. Cool. Then you get the plasma beam, and that thing is just shredding everybody, bro. That thing is just dead to rights. That thing is sending people to the Phantom Zone. In this game, the dark and the light beam just feel like use the super effective damage depending on the world that you're in.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then the sound one is just, I'm lazy and I don't really feel like beam switching, so I'm just going to shoot everything with the sound beam. Now, I will admit, the dark beam puzzles, aka shoot this crystal. Light beam puzzles, shoot this dark crystal. Woo. Now, the sound puzzles, having to use the echo visor and then shoot things with the annihilator beam. All right, I'll give you, your brain juices were brain-elating.
Like, that was kind of cool.
Y'all were doing a thing. I'll give you big old props for that. But the visors and the beams, significantly downgraded in this game.
Yeah.
And that's not even factoring the fact that there's ammo for your beams. That's number one. Now, talk about bosses. We did talk, there was a few mid bosses in Prime 1. Let me teach you about the...
Just a second, if anybody in the comments wants to try this, here's a challenge. If you can even name 3 of the bosses from Prime 2, not counting Dark Samus. Dark Samus.
Damn!
Okay, no. You got to make this charge harder. You cannot use Dark Samus, nor can you use anything that is a noun or verb guardian. You don't get those. Those are also off the table. Now, we're going to go in order of these bosses, and I'm going to tell you if they left an impression worth caring about. You start off with the Alpha Splinter, which then gets infected into the Dark Alpha Splinter. That boss is literally just, we grabbed the corner of the 3D model and we dragged it and made it bigger and put a big red eye on it. Boom. New enemy type. The Big Splinter. Now, that being said, it does teach you that the Dark World can corrupt things in the Light World and give them different attack patterns. So at least they gave you knowledge. The boss itself...
It's mid.
Big sleep. Then you get the Bomb Guardian, which is just one of those worms that you fought earlier in the game, but has the ability to lay bombs with its eyeballs. Doesn't really do anything spectacular. It just kind of exists as an ends to a means. Then you have a Jump Guardian, which is literally just an ing that jump good. That's it. That's the fight. And in a game where you have an automatic lock-on button, it is very trivial to track the thing. This isn't like a reflex test. It just kind of walks around and then makes a swing shing as it shoots a Kamehameha at you every couple of seconds. Swing shing jump, swing shing jump, swing shing jump. That's it. That's the fight. Then you have the first Dark Samus fight. All right, interesting. We'll give you a gold star. We'll pat you on the head for this one. You're going to go out there and beat somebody. Now, they say, hey, you remember the Bomb Guardian? All right, we're going to drag it. We're going to make it big. We're going to cut it into thirds, and we're going to attach it to a ball. Then there's this boss called Amorbus, which is 3 giant sandworms. And they just jump.
Yep.
That's it. That's the fight. Then there's the Dark Missile Trooper, which is supposed to be, at least they tried to give you some sort of creep factor. Oh no, it's a zombie. No, it's Resident Evil. Ooh. And all right, fine, whatever. That if you want a head pat for that, well, sure, whatever. It literally dies in like 10 seconds. It doesn't leave an impression. It's not even scary because by the time you fight this thing, you are pretty decently armed. And it doesn't even play in like creepy music. It's pretty much a generic. You want to know the best part about it? It's actually optional. You don't even have to fight this thing. You can leave. But anyways, then you have the Boost Guardian. Now, I played the GameCube version of this game. I have Metroid Prime Trilogy, and I'm going to tell you the truth, guys. It's still NRFB. I've not removed it from its box. I just own it. I got it on release. It's just sitting up there in its protective sleeve inside of its metal case. Yeah, I got it as a collector's item. That being said, the Boost Guardian in the GameCube version, I did not think was that hard. I cleared it on the first try. Everyone else I hear talk about this thing act like this thing has murdered its firstborn child, made their wife leave them, made their husband cheat on them. Like, they make it seem like this thing extorted them out of their 401k and their retirement pension. Like, they make it seem like this man robbed them in broad daylight, 2 p.m. in the middle of the street, and everybody else was too scared to do anything about it, much less call the police. So, tell me, is the Boost Guardian really that guy?
I don't really see what other people had an issue with.
Because... oh, go on.
Honestly, I don't even remember the Boost Guardian specifically.
Right?
So it's like all the Guardian bosses blend together.
Because the Boost Guardian, if you don't know what it does, it literally turns into a ball, turns yellow, and it just like tries to tackle you. That's the boss fight.
Yep.
You're going to get a lot of that's the boss fight in this game because the boss fights are very lackluster, except for 2. There are 2 that I like. 2. And when I say I like, I mean, I love them. I think they're great. I think they're actually awesome. I think they provide a lot and bring a lot to the table. I would say that they might actually be in my top 6 boss fights in all of Metroid. But once again, we will get there. So then we have the Awful Blog, which is basically a giant suction cup underwater. That's the fight. Like, it literally looks at you, it charges at you, and that's the fight. You shoot it in the mouth with a super missile, you step to the side. Now you may be saying, well, that kind of sounds like the beetle boss you talked about in the first game. And that's because it is, but underwater. Congratulations. Now, then we have Sora's favorite boss fight, and my just why does this even exist? So remember how I said that a lot of assets were reused from the first game, whether it be beams or some enemy types? Well, there was an enemy type in the first game that you may call you remember the little Sheegoth people? You remember how they had like those little baby Sheegoths with the ice on their back? Well, in this game, there are these things called Grenchers, and they're in Torva's Bog, and they basically work the exact same way. Except they have giant horns as opposed to really nasty teeth. One of them gets infected with the grapple beam and becomes the Grapple Guardian. Now, I don't know how many of you have seen stupid people do this during the winter, where a metal pole or a street sign would become wet, and then they would stick their tongue to it. Yeah, that's the fight. It grapples an electric coil in the center of the room, and it gets stuck. And then you just shoot it while it's twerking at you, and then it goes, ow, my butt. Oh, no. And then you repeat that about 5 or 6 times, and that's the fight. The state of your boss is made. Now, we get to one of those bosses that I think is one of the best bosses in the series, but even that being said, I will acknowledge that it has one big flaw, and I will give it to anyone that if this flaw made the game or the boss not fun for you, I will 100% take your side on that. I can play devil's advocate even on things that I may disagree with. But there's this boss fight named Chica, and it starts off as this larval stage, and then you fight that, and it's a pretty mundane fight. Nothing special, but it has attacks, it jumps, it splashes, it tries to grapple you into the water. It does things. It tries to come up on stage and tilt the stage and like try to make you slide down. Like, it does things that are pretty interesting, and it has a level of interactivity that none of the other bosses before it had. Now, that being said, you get rid of it, and then you see there's this giant cocoon of a Chica larva that was in Chrysalis. So technically this is 2 bosses. Now, it's this giant, gargantuan, Mothra-like creature, and you gotta shoot super missiles at its wings, at the joints, in order to cripple it so it falls into the ooze, and then it becomes Dark Chica. But then, obviously, its immune system kicks in, and it can purify itself and become regular Chica again, blah, 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 blah. Really cool thing. It can transform itself between a light form and a dark form, which in a game about light and dark, you think more bosses would have this mechanic of an easy mode or a hard mode or 2 different forms, some a little bit of dichotomy between how you handle the situation. But no, this is the only boss that takes advantage of the gimmick of the game, which is silly to me, but I digress. So, yeah, fight it, and it's really fun. It's, the stage transforms, you gotta do platforming, you gotta grapple around, but you can only shoot super missiles at its back. The video that you guys seeing here is somebody fighting the boss, and what you're gonna notice is the front and the back look the same. And it's really hard to tell if you're shooting it at the back, and then you waste 5 missiles when you shoot your super missile, and you see it bounce off into the nebulous outer space because you were in front of it and not behind it. So yeah, I get why you would be angry, especially if you died because you were down to your last set of super missiles, and then it just doinked and went into the moon, and then you just died. Like, okay, I get it. Because you guys got to remember, all the Dark World bosses, until you get the light suit, you take tick damage because you're in a corrosive environment. You got to remember that.
It's really
You're on a timer. So, once again, I can get why you would be upset. I'm not ignorant to that fact. So then after that, we now fight one of the worst bosses in Metroid history, known as the Spider Guardian. And
See, this is the boss I hear everybody talk about with Metroid Prime 2.
Yep.
And it was also the boss that gave me the biggest pain from what I remember when I played it too.
So the Spider Guardian is a guardian that, like, on paper, it's nothing. It's not really that bad. But you got to understand, precision-based morph ball movement is not necessarily the best thing that you want to bank on in this game, because there are one tiles gaps that it wants you to bomb jump. And if you ever so happen to hit the lip of the thing above you, you just get pushed to the side, and then you can't get to where you actually wanted to go. And then you either have to start over or wait for the phase to reset. And I'm not saying that it's a hard boss fight, but it is very tedious. And if you're not good at controlling the morph ball, like most people aren't, and if you're not, once again, 100% fully aligned with the top of, the next layer that you want to bomb up to, or you're just not fast enough, or you just happen to overcompensate and you roll too far and you fall back down, you're basically going to be here for a while. And the Spider Guardian on the GameCube hit like a Mack fucking truck. So the margin of error was much less in the Predator, back in the day, than it is now. I heard that the Spider Guardian had lost its step in the trilogy version, but I digress. Boss fight, not fun. It's literally a worm that has a small little aura around itself, and it just floats around. It doesn't even attack you. All it does is run into you, and you just have to memorize which path it takes and avoid the path. And then bomb it to stun it. That's it. That's the fight.
And anyone that tries to argue that it's not that hard, you played the trilogy version, you have morph ball jump in that version, shut the fuck up.
Oh my god, they do, don't they?
Yep. It makes it way easier.
You have spring ball in that game. Oh my god, dude. Yeah, never mind. Yeah, y'all don't know how good you have it. But anyways, so then you fight the boss fight. That's the fight. That's the fight. Now you may be saying, well, what are you talking about? So after the Spider Guardian, they keep it in the morph ball theme, because next you fight the boss fight, which is the Powerbomb Guardian, which is all it does is it's a plant that is stuck to a wall and will occasionally go and shoot a power bomb as it burps it at you, and you just avoid the bomb. That's the fight. Then you have this.
So sorry, it was just you do this track with the spider ball while it's shooting power bombs at you, and that's it until you get to the end and you blow it up.
Then there's the Dark Samus second fight, which once again, fine fight. I think most people liked it. I wouldn't necessarily say anything negative about it. Then there's a boss fight that doesn't have a health bar, but I'm counting it as a boss fight because it's not skippable and you're stuck in it. It's called the Caretaker Class Drone, which is basically you're in a morph ball. Yes, another morph ball battle here. And essentially, you roll into a thing, and then this thing comes down, and now there's just like a little claw and electric taser that are just going beep, boop, beep, zzz, zzz, boop, boop, zzz, boop. And then you have to boost ball through the track to hit this red thing that comes down when it overheats. And I'll admit, you may think I'm talking mess or shit about this boss. No, this was actually a boss that was actually well curated. It teaches you how to use the morph ball mechanics more. It's very intensive. It's the best morph ball boss out of the three in this, well, technically four if you count the Boost Guardian in this game. And that's saying a lot. Then we have probably, in my opinion, best boss out of the Metroid Prime trilogy. Sora will fight me to the grave on this one, and that's fine.
Yep.
But Quadraxis, godlike boss. It teaches you how to use just about every mechanic that is in your arsenal in a nice, fun, strategic, and relatively coherent package. Now, I say relatively because apparently maybe I'm smart or maybe I'm just as dumb as the developers. It's either one of those two. Because somehow, some way, people could not figure out what you're supposed to do when he's a floating head and floating around his body. Apparently, I'm like the only person who just got what to do. Joe, am I alone? Was I the only one who knew? Oh, he's got an antenna, echo visor. Am I the only one?
Honestly, man, it's been so long that I don't remember how the fight works.
Because the other thing is, people didn't know you were supposed to shoot his joints, or when he's in his morph, or when he's spinning around, how to deal with that. And it's like, guys, there were many quads that like these other mini quadraxes that you fight, and it's teaching you how to deal with it.
The only problem I have with that is they're small, and what you do to them makes sense. And then when you make it the fucking size of a building, my brain doesn't quite link like, oh, I should do the same thing I did to the small fry, because it's like smashing my morph ball into small quadraxis makes sense. Smashing it into big quadraxis doesn't make much sense.
But you know that the legs are a point of emphasis, so you should have known to at least shoot
Yes.
the legs, though. Because I know a lot of people who didn't even understand that you got to shoot the joints, or that even looking at the legs is something you should probably do. But I digress. I thought it was a great boss fight. Now, some people think, oh man, I can't wait for him to sing the praise of the Emperor Aang. Wrong. Wrong, there are no praises. It's the first Metroid Prime again. You have a giant crab that moves left, right, shoots lasers, and it changes its form based on what beam you're supposed to shoot it with. No, it's the same. It's a regurgitated boss fight. No, you do not get credit for copying your own homework.
And it's not even a good copy.
And some people will say, well, what about its first form? I think it has 3 forms. I only remember the form where you fight it as a crab and when you have to morph ball and like bomb the pus ports, the USB ports on its side. If there's a third form, I don't remember it. I feel like there is a third form, but I don't remember it. Am
No
I
one
wrong?
gives a shit. The last Dark Samus is the real final boss fight and the good boss fight.
Yeah, that was good. I like that.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty damn cool. But you want to know what else I thought was pretty damn cool?
Chaika.
You're damn right. Chaika's like the other side of the pillow. Either it's too damn hot and the missile goes into space, or it's just right and the game is great. But yeah, exploration down, bosses down, mechanics down. I don't see how people looked at Prime 2 and said, yeah, this is the game. And by the way, we have an unpopular opinion here. Like, most people tell me that Prime 2 is the GOAT.
I don't get it. It seems like 2 just tries to be different by doing different things without really thinking about why, and maybe that's why people like it.
And while that may be true, you gotta understand one thing. I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure Metroid Prime 2 is the first and only game in the Metroid series where the suits are basically the same thing. Damage reduction to the light, or excuse me, to the dark world damage. Because if I'm wrong, you could tell me. I don't think the dark suit does anything else.
Oh my god, they don't.
Because the dark suit doesn't give you like better movement. The gravity boost is what allows you to move freely in the Kool-Aid water. I'm pretty sure it's just damage reduction and dark world energy reduction.
Yeah.
And maybe like a passive dealing with standing in those light crystal bubbles. But I don't think the suits actually do anything to aid in game mechanics. Even though they're both considered, even though they're both considered major upgrades.
Yeah, all it does is negate damage.
So people saying Prime 2 is the GOAT, I think you're on something, but you know, people being on something seems to be a common theme in today's world. Prime 3 corruption. Look, I'm not. Well, actually,
you forgot Hunters.
I've never played Hunters.
No.
Y'all, this is y'all's time. I'm gonna just be quiet. I've never played Hunters. I played the demo, and I thought,
you had the best experience. You had the best possible experience of Prime Hunters. Like, honestly, they should have just left it at that fucking demo they released. People would be like, man, that was a great game.
It was like
it's
20
cool.
minutes, but it's a great game.
It's cool how they made Prime on the DS. They didn't really do much more than make it control well. It's just
It's an awesome concept, but it's a game that I think was really hamstrung by its budget. Like, that's the only thing I can imagine, because the fact that you had to fight the same fucking boss like 4 times, 2 different bosses, by the way. You had to fight each of them at least 3 times.
It's 4.
And they barely change.
Oh my god.
They barely change at all. They add like a few more like nodes for you to shoot or some shit like that. And it's just going back and forth between these same worlds. Like you have to same moving between the worlds and then fighting the same bosses over and over. Like,
and look, I know that it came out, around like what, 2006, 2007 maybe?
Yeah. 2006.
And I've seen some videos of people playing it. I'm not going to lie to you. The level design looks like levels that are in the second half of Halo 1.
Yep.
Like it's a lot of these weird religious looking archways, these spire things you climb up, and like, do y'all remember like those little ramps in like 343 Guilty Spark? Like the little concrete slabs that make geometric shapes, where it's like kind of an arch, then it makes a bridge, then it's sharp 90-degree turn to go up another lift. Yeah, that's what a lot of level design reminded me of.
It's just not worth talking about, honestly.
The multiplayer component was the coolest part of that game.
Yep.
And that's really weird to say for a Metroid game.
And you want to know what the funny
Metroid
part
Prime
is?
2 had its...
You know what the funny part is to add to that point? I've seen some esports level advanced technique tournaments of Metroid Prime Hunters. Like
fuck?
No, there's like a private server. Like you could play this online. Like they are wilding out there.
That's amazing.
I will put some videos on the screen right now. You guys will see that Metroid Prime Hunters multiplayer. It's no joke. It is very Unreal Tournament-esque. Like there's techniques, there's not sequence breaking, but like movement tech to make sure that you're always moving at the right speed. There's crazy places to get in weird disjointed hitbox and head glitches in the map so you can't be shot at from certain angle. There's a lot going on. But yes, Metroid Prime Hunters, I've never played it, but from everything I've seen, boy, does it look like it's rough.
You're not missing much.
I figured as much. But then after that, 2007, and then Prime 3 Corruption, and we're getting close to like 2 hours and some change. So I think we might lightning round Prime 3, because I think we all have similar things about Prime 3 to say. I'll just go first. I'll keep mine real short. Prime 3 is just what happens if Prime 2 and Fusion's worst parts had a baby? And then you slap bad motion controls on it. Because ultimately, it has a very linear narrative. It tries to allow you to, re-go through areas with new upgrades, but none of it ever really seems like it leads to anything, substantial. There's a couple of unique puzzles here and there, but everything that Prime 2 did good, they already did better in Prime 2, and they already did better in Prime 1. And in Prime 3, anything that Prime 3 did good, Prime 2 did basically perfect. Which means Prime 1 did it in an angelic fashion. And then the only thing that's really differentiated between Prime 3, Prime 2, and Prime 1, or excuse me, that differentiates Prime 3 from the first 2 games, is the fact that there's this narrative lore of characters speaking and characters you're supposed to be attached to, but unfortunately, you can't get attached to any of them, because by the time you get to know them at all, the only one that makes any sort of real impression is Rundus, because he saves you from the giant fall after fighting Meta Ridley for the first time early in the game. And then the other ones are just like, I'm also a girl. and I use my sex appeal to get what I want. And then Gore's like, I'm a genius in a mech. And then Rundus is just like, hi, I am Iceman. I am Dude. I am the Silver Surfer. And then you just kill him. Like that, who cares?
Yep.
And then from a narrative perspective, the Galactic Federation's like, hello guys, we have these Aurora units and we need to repair them. And it's like, so you remade Mother Brain. Did you learn nothing? But if you read the original Metroid manga, and this once again speaks to the testament of the hubris of humans, but the Chozo, who are infinitely better than you, couldn't control the thing. What makes you think that you're going to be able to control the thing now? And obviously it goes tits up yet again, and the Aurora units lead to the downfall of the Galactic Federation in more ways than one. And yeah, it's not... It's just a nothing burger of a game that has some prime elements, but nothing where I really feel like it's awesome. And the only new real gameplay mechanic worth sinking your teeth into is the PED suit, the performance enhancing drug suit. Which is basically...
Inject me with that cocaine.
Which is just phazon energy coursing through your veins, and you have phazon cancer. And like, I'm not a joke. You actually have phazon cancer. Like, that's actually a thing. And all the other, hunters are corrupted, but somehow you're holding on to your sanity. Must be that Metroid DNA kicking in. Am I right, Marines? And like, I'm not saying that the game is terrible, but like, if Prime 1 is a 9 out of 10, Prime 2 is like a 6.5 to a 7 at best. I'd argue getting it a 6. This game is like a strong 4. I know what you're saying. You just said it wasn't a terrible game. No, you gotta understand. On my scale, a game that is like average, like just 100% mid with no redeeming qualities, is a 3. Because I don't believe bad games should take up half of my scale. That is a waste of numbers. So if you're higher than a 3 on my scale, there's a reason to at least play you once. So Prime Corruption, strong 4. Nothing more than that, though.
Mine's easy, because there's 2 good things Prime 3 did. It's controls, and I mean not only with aiming and shooting and all that shit. Most controls can go die in a fire, because holy god... just stop the game and fucking connect these wires with the plasma beams. And the other one is Rundus' theme.
Yep.
That shit fucking slaps.
Gendrada's theme is all right, but everything else is pretty much downhill. And I even disagree on the controls that you're talking about. Like, when I can remap them on Dolphin to a joystick, fine. I'm all in with you. Because there's no beam switching. I can use my right stick. Yeah, there's also no beam switching, so don't think you're going to get crazy beam combos in this game, ladies and gentlemen. But when I had to like actually aim with the Wii motion nonsense, it was fucking awful. I hated it. Why? Because after 2 or 3 hours, my arm is on fucking fire.
I would just rest my arm on my legs.
Oh no! See see where we had our Wii, we also played like Wii Sports with like pops. So like ours was like in the middle of like we had to stand to play these games. So standing for 3 hours in a Metroid game, and while having to be on the same level, like my arm is like dead, and like I get gorilla arm. So no, Prime 3 was not kind to me. If I'm playing a game and I have to play it in shifts, nah, bro, I'm good, buddy. I'm good. Would I recommend Prime 3 to anyone? No. Would I recommend the Prime trilogy version of 3? Sure, have at it. That'll be fine. Because once I played it with that, it was tolerable. But it never did anything that was good as either of the games before it did.
Just play the trilogy version of Prime 1. Best version.
And then you could just call it a day. Obviously, Federation Force exists. We will not acknowledge it.
Oh, wait, but did Joe want to say anything about corruption?
I don't really have much to say about that game. Like, other than what you guys said. I agree with Sora. The controls for me, like the actual shooting controls, were the best part of the game, and having those in Prime 1 and 2, I think, is a great bonus for the trilogy. But 3 itself is just,
Metroid Prime,
It's just not a game that I really remember much of. Like it just doesn't stick in my brain.
Also, can we be honest here? Because there's something that has always bugged. Okay, is it bad that Fleet Admiral Dane just looks like Redips from Command Mission? Can we talk about that? Because it's bothered me for a while.
Stop bringing up Command Mission, goddammit.
Nah, either that or he's the Mountain Dew Pope, like for real. If you don't remember what he looks like, I'm putting him on screen. That is Commander Mountain Dew Pope. That man has got double XP weekend on lock. That man is a living legend, dude. But alas, back to serious topics.
Also, did we skip Zero Mission?
We did.
Mm-hmm.
We did. Because I was going to talk about the remakes together. I was going to talk about Zero Mission and then Samus Returns. I know we said chronological, but that I figured these would be a good segue into each other since we have two of them to talk about. To cushion the blow before the other game.
Other, I get it.
But alas, Metroid Zero Mission, like as we all know, it's a great game. It is basically the definitive version of the Metroid 1 experience. And Sora, and you know what, Joe, we're gonna let you take. But I don't think Joe has taken point yet, and I feel like he's got a lot to say.
Yeah, Zero Mission's a good game. It's just I feel like the worst parts of Zero Mission are also it's the same problems that when we talk about Samus Returns, it comes from the source material. Like Zero Mission is good gameplay wise, the bosses are good, the stuff they added is pretty good, but everything does like level design wise that's retained from the original Metroid is it's just as bad as it was in the original game.
Yeah, the weakest part is just it's got to be a remake of 1.
Like you still have those areas where you've got the same hallway like stacked on top of each other 3 times.
And I will say, like, I know that there's a lot of secrets in that game, and there's a lot of, interesting ways to traverse the map. But I also feel like it's less, what's the word I'm looking for? It's less intuitive in terms of like map design. Like in Super Metroid, when you see something, it automatically just clicks like, oh, I know what I can do. And this one, a lot of it is kind of like some arbitrary nonsense.
It's a lot of hidden pathways. Like, it's not even marked or strange. It's just a hidden pathway.
I think my favorite thing they did with secrets in Zero Mission, if I remember correctly, there's a lot of puzzles that make you use like the ice beam and different stuff like that in ways that they didn't really try to do with other Metroid games. Freezing enemies in certain ways to use them as platforms, not just to like climb, but to traverse horizontally through areas to get to an item.
Yeah, it started actually getting creative with some of the item puzzles.
And I will admit, because I think I'm pretty sure Fusion had this as well. But speed keep on slopes through Shine Spark. I always thought that was kind of interesting. Now, I could be wrong. I could have scored for a missile for 100%. There is a puzzle in Zero Mission that requires you to do like ball sparks in like 3 different locations at like some weird low to the ground slope. And I thought that was very interesting, but I was like, hell if I would ever get that missile.
Yeah. Fusion and Zero Mission, I think, are really the games where they started to be like, oh, you want to get 100%, motherfucker? Like, you better learn how to shine Spark. Like, Super Metroid, you can get 100% in that game fairly easily without having to master, like, the movement mechanics and stuff necessarily.
Yeah, you just have to have a good eye for sniffing some stuff out, because I think Super Metroid is probably one of the best games with hints. Also, I hate to go back to Prime. There is one thing that I thought was an ingenious way of doing it, because remember, you couldn't see on the map where an item was. It would be too clunky on a 3D map to see that. That's number one. Number two, obviously, having an item just out in the open every single time would be kind of weird. But there was a sound and audio cue for when an item was nearby. This wow.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
really
we
good.
didn't mention that. I just feel as though that's such a good thing that mentioning that is something that we should have done.
Mhm.
So I've done it retroactively now. But anyways, back to Metroid Zero Mission. I feel like Zero Mission is, like I said, like you guys have said earlier, to echo some of your sentiments, great game. It is fluid. It's just that some of the worst things are when it tries to reference the original.
Yep.
And I do feel as though a lot of the new things that they added were pretty good and pretty clever. Now, the space pirate, you've been kidnapped on the giant sperm ship, and now you gotta fight your way out. That's really hit or miss with a lot of people. I personally didn't mind it, but that's the thing. I don't think I've ever met anyone who said, oh my God, this part is so sick. It's either, it was okay, or we could have done without it, or don't ever make me do that shit again. Holy fucking shit, Nintendo. Like, those are pretty much the three opinions I've seen about that.
On subsequent playthroughs, I like it less and less.
That's funny because
It feels like
For
20
me,
to 30 minutes of busy work.
for me, I hated it the first time I played, and now I'm just like, it's whatever. Like, it's not difficult really. So it's just kind of like, all right, let's get through this and finish the game. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of how I feel at that point. It's like, yeah, I guess I'll. Yeah, it's almost like once you beat Mother Brain, you could almost just put Zero Mission down and be like, yeah, I think I've
Yeah.
beaten the game.
Yeah, because
Like-
because like, it feels more like it just, honestly, the space pirate, kidnapping session honestly feels like if a Game Boy Advance game had DLC.
Dude, I was just gonna say that.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like add-on expansion pack content.
Like, it doesn't feel like a good, satisfying ending either when you finish it. I don't know.
It's whatever.
Because it's like, I know the space pirates have the ability to work fast, but did they just have like a backup mechanical Ridley just on standby? Or are there two Ridleys? Or did they really just have like a robot that was an empty shell, and then when Ridley died, they just took his brain matter and then stuffed it in a new robot, and then it was like,
Yeah. I think the only thing that's neat about that fight, I'm pretty sure this is the case, is if you, like, the more item completion you have, the more fully built that boss is when you reach the end of the game. So if you have 100% item completion, it's like a harder fight.
Yeah, I never knew that.
But the problem with getting 100% item completion in that game is that you don't get those power bombs until you're all the way inside the mothership, and you have to backtrack your ass all the way out of the mothership to go back to Zebes and like use the power bombs.
Like that legit is just bad design. Like there is no
Yeah.
excusing that.
You literally don't get the power bombs until 5 minutes before the game ends.
I mean, it's better than how they did it in Other M. No, I'm still not over it.
What a segue.
No, we're not there yet. We still got to do Samus
Not just
Returns.
yet.
Don't bust that nut yet. We'll be right back. But yeah, so Zero Mission, once again, like I said, great game. I just
Solid
feel like
game.
I just feel like that when you deal with the fact that it is Metroid, the original, the problems of it being that is what is going to seep through.
Yep.
Especially with the whole Kraid Ridley areas blocked off dynamic to get to, Turian to do Mother Brain. And Mother Brain feels like that would be a satisfying way to end the game. But it just felt
Speaking, oh, sorry.
it just, I don't know if the developers got cold feet and said, I don't know if we have enough game though. And then they tagged on that second part, or if they just wanted to get a chance to, get into the nitty gritty with the lore. But even that Chozo fight where you shoot the reflections of yourself, like you're trying to fight your inner demons, like, I get that there's probably, a nice little subtlety to the storytelling of you have to prove your worth to get the gravity suit and be whole again. And I get that. But at the same time, the fact that it only gives you exactly what you had before just seems kind of arbitrary as fuck. But once again, we can suspend our disbelief for that. That's fine. It's a Metroid game, whatever. But when you do it and then you beat it, it's just like space pirates are all over this place and they didn't find this.
Yeah, it just seems there to be like, oh yeah, power suit.
So, and then you get like a lot, and it's weird because when you think about it, there's like 4 or 5 abilities that you have, but you never get to use because it's like unknown item. And it's not until you get that suit to where you can use like 4 or 5 items that you found hours ago.
Like, did they just give you a underpowered suit and it was like, Samus, you're not ready?
Limiters
firmware
unlocked.
upgrade.
Yeah, man, you got to download more missiles. Didn't you learn anything from Fusion? You got to download more missiles. Even though Fusion is later in the saga, but we're not going to talk about that. Anyways, speaking of remakes.
Speaking of games marred by what they're trying to remake.
Metroid Samus Returns. Now, as you all know, Metroid 2, like, the way the original Metroid 2 is designed is basically you have to kill all the Metroids on the planet, which you may think, all right, that's not really the best, thing, but at least it's an ideal and a goal to strive towards. And while on one hand you're right, it stifles your ability to open up the planet and allow the player to actually enjoy a Metroid game. Now, in the remake, Samus Returns on the 3DS, this exact problem is exacerbated, and you could even argue that it's even, not just more frequent, more prevalent, but more painful. Because in this game, there are certain times where I guess the developers couldn't find a way to stop you from sequence breaking certain things. So they went way out of their way to like start putting like fans to stop your bombs from being able to be laid in certain places, just to stop you from being able to go up. And there's about 7 or 8 different locations where this happens. Like there are actually fans that interact with your bombs, where if you place a bomb, your bomb will be blown to the left or the right, so you cannot use it to bomb jump over a wall that's not even that high. And I feel like when you have a lot of things like this, it discourages the player from wanting to seek out more, which then sets a bad precedent of you forcing yourself to just follow this pretty much, I don't want to call it predetermined, but it's a pretty much, there is a direct path that they want you to take. And I'm going to be honest with you. When they tried to add every new thing that they tried to add to further, add a level of evolution or a level of adaptation to the gameplay of the original, they just made the game worse. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I cannot stand multiple boss arena fetch quests as fights. And you may be saying, well, what does that mean? So in the first time, you might have a boss that's like, let's just say a Zeta Metroid, and it's annoying and it's beating you, and you win the battle of attrition and you finally take it out and you win. All right, you feel good. Cool. Awesome. Problem with Samus Returns is like, if it gets to half health and you don't like quick kill it, it'll then be like, all right, I'm leaving, and it'll just crawl through this place that you can't go through and go to another room. And then you have to leave the room you're in and, like, in some cases, solve a puzzle to just get to the other room to fight it again. And I don't believe that they have the same health. I believe they actually heal, and then you fight them again. And it gets to the point where the tedious Metroid hunt becomes more tedious because now you have to fight some of the Metroids twice. And that is in and of itself a pain. They also introduced this thing called the parry mechanic, where you wait for an enemy to flash, you parry it, and then you be able to do high damage and a little bit of a cutscene. Problem is, when I say they relied on this mechanic like it's a crutch, I mean not just a crutch. These are the game's prosthetics legs. They built the entire chassis of this game to be based around this one button press, sit there and just stare at the enemy in a staring contest until it does the one move. Then you push the button and then you start spamming missiles or your strongest beam, etc., so on and so forth. And it makes a lot of the interactions with a lot of the bosses and a lot of the enemies and even just like the regular generics, the level ones of the game, just very, very boring. And it takes a lot of substance out of the game. Because of
Slows it down.
Yep.
Because if the exploration isn't that great, and then the pacing also isn't that great, how on the planet Earth can you ever make a game that does those two things and then also double down and make the combat bad?
The core problem with Samus Returns is that it doesn't let the player express themselves creatively using Samus's moveset. It, like you said, stand, parry. That's how combat works. Don't go this way, jackass. Fuck you, we're gonna put event here. You're not allowed to do this yet. Go down over there, fuckface. Like, it's just you're going through the motions. Some director off stage is fucking yelling at you to follow the script.
And if you don't follow to the letter, then your progression is going to be stifled. And look, I understand that, like, you know, you have all the lore reasons you want for whatever you want, but having door caps be openable by certain beams or missiles or certain equipment, that's fine. Don't overthink it. And this game overthought it. And this is one of the most nitpicky things I'll ever nitpick. But there is a creature that latches to doors, and it has 3 eyes, and you cannot open it until you get it's either wide beam or it's either spacer wide beam or plasma beam. But
It's
you
Caesar.
can only shoot these doors and open them by shooting all 3 eyes at the exact same time. And it's just, I don't know. I don't know why. It bothers me. It bothers me a lot. I don't know why.
Everything is a key at this point.
Yeah, everything.
Got the spacer, use it to open these doors. Got the grapple beam, open to use these doors.
But Mercury Steam, the same development studio behind this game, just put the door caps back. They stop overthinking it. And I applaud them for that in that game. But in this game, it's Metroid 2 and all of its pitfalls, but in 2017. We can forgive you when it's like, you know, 1986, 1991. We can forgive you for having a lot of pitfalls because you got to innovate the game in order for the game to grow and get to where it needs to be. In 2017, we've already seen plenty of Metroidvanias that have already innovated on the formula. We don't need this too.
Also, like the problems inherited from the structure of Metroid 2. Like, they try to expand the areas in some places to add, like, areas to explore, areas where you need to get an item and come back to get another item. You know, classic Metroid stuff. But the problem is it preserves the structure of Metroid 2, and so in order to make it easier to get back to these areas, they start throwing in teleporters, which has, you know, never been a thing in other Metroid games. They just start adding teleportation to the game, which is carried over in Mercury Steam's next Metroid game.
Exactly, because a lot of the stuff that you see in Samus Returns, I mean, I hate to say it, in terms of pacing, in terms of cool, innovative bosses, and cool of how you interact with the world and how item progression allows you to explore more, it all loses to a fan game called AM2R.
Yep.
And no offense, I don't know if you guys really remember, but these games both came out in like 2017.
Yep.
So
that's why Nintendo was like, shit, shut it down.
So no, August 6, 2016 is when AM2R dropped. Because I played it like when it first dropped, then it got DMCA'd like the day it came out. But once it's on the internet, it's there forever, regardless of what you want to do about it. But the fact of the matter remains is when you really break something down and you really look down into its deeper parts, you got to understand one very important thing. When a fan game does everything, I don't want to necessarily say the right way, because there are some pitfalls that AM2R falls into. And once again, most of them are just, you're a remake of Metroid 2. Never forget that. That's what you are. At least then, I feel like the environments were varied enough, the puzzles were creative enough, and the game never stifled you from exploring. It always wanted you to take, to the next level and look at something and be like, oh, I see. And there was multiple ways to skin a cat. You could infinite bomb jump. You want to do that to get the item? You could do that. You want a spider ball to get the item? You could do that. You want a space jump to get the item? You could do that. You want a wall jump to get the item? You could do that. In Samus Returns, most of the items are, you can only get them this one way. Don't try to do it another way, because it's just not going to go well. Because these rooms may have been too meticulously looked at and crafted to be designed in one way, instead of opening up to give the player the option to do something different. Like, you are not rewarded for thinking outside of the box in a Metroid game, and I think that's terrible.
Yeah.
All right, Joe. What would you say is the best thing you could probably say about this game? Or the worst?
What the fuck was that Ridley fight at the end?
Oh God!
What the fuck was that?
I wanted to save that for last, but I guess we got to talk about it since we brought it up. So I don't know how many of you guys are Star Wars geeks in the chat or in the comment section down below. All right, if you are, there's a movie called Solo: A Star Wars Story, and I know what you're thinking. That movie was pretty decent, right? Well, you see, the problem is, you ever have like a mystique about a character in some other form of media? Like, I don't know, when you meet them in, New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Last Jedi, like even when you go all the way to The Last Jedi into the sequel series, all the way through those movies, there's this air of mystique about Han Solo. So then they wanted to over-explain Han Solo and rip all the mystique away. And then you find out he's just a geek. Like, he's just a dude he was a dude that was poor once. And he just decided, I can't trust anyone. And that's his backstory. They just basically turned him into Shadow the Hedgehog. That's essentially what they tried to do. All right, fine, whatever. But you see how you can kind of cripple a character just by putting them too much into the spotlight and over-explaining things. Then there's another Star Wars story called Rogue One. Now, you may be saying, okay, what about Rogue One? How is this related to Metroid? All right, watch this. So the ending of Rogue One, the rebels steal the plans, and they have the USB drive with the plans on it, and they're trying to run away from Darth Vader in a hallway. Darth Vader starts Mortal Kombat fatalitying 16 people in a hallway, chasing the guy who he knows has the flash drive with all the stuff on the drive. Now, he could have easily just force crushed the flash drive or force choked everyone in the room, but he wanted to make an example of everyone by cutting them down with lightsabers for a cool set piece. But the set piece ruins the substance of the next movie, because the next movie in the timeline, chronologically, would be A New Hope, where Leia tells Vader this very scene right here. I'm on a diplomatic mission for the Senate, or whatever bullshit she says. And then Vader's like, that's a goddamn lie. And you may be saying, back then, well, it's just a lie. She had to try, right? But when you watch Rogue One and you see how it ends, that's cap. Not only are you lying, he saw you do it. He saw you take the plans and pull out of the Walmart parking lot. He watched you. He watched you do it. And he watched you do it because 16 of your people are decapitated or cut in half. Like, what? Which
that's why.
That's why Ridley being at the end of Samus Returns sucks dick.
And the reason why I say this is because let's backtrack to Super Metroid. We all, like anybody who's ever seen Super Metroid, we all know of one specific line of dialogue. Say it with me now if you know the words. Are you ready? 3, 2. All right, we're gonna fuck this up. I already know that somehow this is not gonna like in my
I was
head,
like, wait, what is he getting at?
In my head, fine, I'll say it because no one else, because y'all seem to be lost. The last Metroid is in captivity. The galaxy is at peace. That's it. This is it.
I thought that's what you were getting at, but I was getting nervous.
Yeah, I felt no one
like, oh god,
oh
god, we're gonna fuck it up.
Like when I said, "Are we ready?" and I said 3, and there was a disturbance in the force that told me, "Nah, don't do it. Just cut this gag while it still has life. Let it die, and just say the words." Anyways, so last Metroid's in captivity, galaxy is at peace, and the opening of Super Metroid is. I found the baby Metroid. It followed me. First thing I did was I brought it to the space station for research purposes. That is the first thing that I did. The results that they found were astounding. I shook their hands and I left. And before I could even get outside of the asteroid belt that the space station is in, it was attacked. So then she had to bust a Yui to come back to find everyone is dead. And then Ridley is there. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute. No. They don't tell me what they did. Yes. So at the end of the remake of Metroid 2, Samus Returns, there is a Ridley fight in which Ridley is trying to murder you on the planet, and you basically shooting Ridley in the next week, and then the Metroid jumps on his face and starts suckling his nostril, and he's badly damaged. And by the way, he's proto-meta Ridley. Like, he's still got, like, a whole bunch of, like, what do you call those? Not augmentations. What's the word I'm looking for? Prosthetics. He's got prosthetics. He's got augmentation. He's got, like, a metal jaw. He's got some armor on, which means he's still suffering and reeling from the time you fought him in the first game, in Zero Mission. Now, in Metroid 2, you knock him down again, and you leave, and you go straight to the Ceres station. You just beat his ass, which means somehow he then flew behind your ship while you got to Ceres, gave him the Metroid, and he was just sitting there on an asteroid rock just watching you apparently the whole time in 4K. Then you left the parking lot, and then you left, and then really did the Flintstones twinkle toe and just snuck in the back door, killed everyone on the ship. There was a distress signal. You busted a Yui, went back, and then Ridley's just like, "Hello there, Samus. Did you miss me?" It's like, no, we literally beat you up like 15 minutes ago. Like, I just gave you the hands. Well, I'm too powerful for you now. Ha ha. And then he just leaves with the baby Metroid. And it's like, I know y'all were trying to do fan service and whatnot, but maybe you should put the Ridley fight like at the middle of the game or something. It still would have not made too much sense. But at the very least, it wouldn't be 5 minutes after I beat him up. He followed me the entire way and then beat me up.
And Samus is too stupid to like realize that he followed her to the space colony.
Yeah.
Because technically, it means that Samus is also technically inept because she wasn't keeping an eye on her scanners or her radar. Because if by the new lore, what this means is Ridley didn't have intel on where Samus was going or that the baby Metroid was captured and brought here. What it means is Samus led these people to their death.
Yep.
You brought the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Which means Samus is now responsible for the deaths of all the people on that space station. But once again, I'm sure that when they decide to do a Metroid 3 make, oh no. There will be a Super Metroid remake, whether you like it or not. And no, all of your favorite sequence breaking and mock ball and your favorite advanced techniques will probably not be present. But alas, they tried. Anywho, so what's it? Samus Returns from a lore perspective is a nightmare. From a gameplay perspective, it's mid at best, and that's only at its absolute best. And when it comes to bosses, once again, it's just 50 It's just 50 of the same Metroids over and over and over again ad nauseum, and then the Diggernaut. And I think you fight Arachnus as well, and like there's a couple of other bosses that just exist that aren't worth acknowledging because I don't remember them. And I played the game like last year, and I played it and it first came out. I even have the special edition. So yeah, you could definitely say that even though I played this game 2 to 3 times, most of the bosses are not really memorable in any way, shape, or form. And then you have the Diggernaut, which was just, we wanted to put a random difficulty spike in the game, and this guy takes 3 energy tanks every time he touches you. And
just play AM2R.
And I think one of the dumbest things, at least to me, in terms of the Diggernaut boss fight, is just how finicky his claws are when you're supposed to spider ball up the claws. Because like even if you're like a frame too late or a frame too early, you just lose 3 energy tanks. You just get bodied. And there's a thing that I didn't notice that a lot of people didn't notice. And maybe it's because it's not really intuitive, because you always see fans blowing things, but there's a part where he starts sucking things into the background. And most people don't bomb. Like, they just think like, oh, I need to spider ball onto the wall and stay here so he can't suck me up. Which then puts you into a gameplay loop for who knows how long. Because, you know, some people, you know, they're just not mashing bomb. But yeah, you have to send bombs into the background to hit him, which is a mechanic that the game, once again, up to this point has not taught you about was a thing. So it's not necessarily the most intuitive thing to do. And so ultimately, not really the most well-designed boss fight. Not even close. And therefore, I can't give it any props. So from a boss perspective, game's pretty ass.
Oh, but I love the way the gravity suit looks. It's the one thing it did good.
Yeah, aesthetically appealing gravity suit is best gravity suit. I'll give you that. But I will say another thing that I will say is not necessarily a positive. I wouldn't necessarily say it's the biggest negative. But the game never gets to a point to where you want to just say, no, this is stupid, I'm out. Unless you count the Ridley fight, but you're already at the end of the game. There's nothing you can do. The game has already got you for all it's worth. But there's nothing where I just think it's like inherently I feel disrespected by giving this game my time. Metroid Prime 3 had a couple of moments like that. Metroid Prime 2 had
pushing it.
Oh, the Diggernaut is the cusp. For some people, it might actually just be the Diggernaut. All right, like y'all might have got me on that one. All right, maybe it has one. But it never really had that choke point where it was just like, all right, throw it away. Just throw the whole game away. Now, I will give you all the option. Because I know we're a little bit long here. A little bit long-winded here, ladies and gentlemen. We can either talk about Other M and Dread in a part 2. Because I know one of us has a lot to say about Other M.
It's the most pertinent Metroid game in the culture sphere right now, so I do have a lot to say about it, and it's not negative, which surprises me.
Because Other M, don't get me wrong.
Everyone knows about Other M.
It is worth hating, yes. But some people hate it for reasons that are not the game's fault. Or I should say, the game doesn't even do the thing that you said it's doing. But there's a whole bunch of different topics we can use Other M to talk about. Or we can just rip right into Other M and Metroid Dread right now. So you want a part 1, part 2? Or you want to just let it go?
Oh, man.
We've been talking a lot of Metroid. I feel like I could talk a lot of shit. Well, not shit, but talk a lot about 2 and how a lot of its game design choices has been influenced by other things. And maybe also take the time to talk about Metroidvania games that are worth talking about as well. Like Hollow Knight. I have a lot to say about Hollow Knight.
That game pains you in a way that I hope no game pains me. But alas, we will see you guys next time, because I feel like this has been about 3 hours. 3 hours and 15 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. We've been talking.
Boy.
If you've managed to get this far, then goddamn congratulations.
You're a trooper.
Congratulations. You're a true Metroid
A dark
fan.
missile trooper.
A winner is you. There you go.